Ladies and gentlemen, Diamond Podcasting Productions presents The Shoot, a pro wrestling podcast, with your hosts, Dan Burke and Drew McKenzie.
As we speak, it is currently the opening round of the 2024 NFL Draft. So I apologize if me or Mac are distracted at certain points this evening. The Patriots will be picking rather shortly. So Mac and I our distraction will be taken out in a few minutes. So if we do decide to talk about the NFL draft kind of at certain points, if we get distracted, I apologize, but at the same time, I don't. I as you can see from the background, I am a proud Bostonian. I care about my Patriots. I care about my Red Sox. I care about my Celtics. And yes, folks, I even care about my Bruins.
You're goddamn right you do.
Yes. As Mac was at game one of the first round of the NHL Finals this past weekend to see the Boston Bruins beat the Toronto Maple Leafs 5-1.
Fun fact.
Fun
fact. I'm sorry to cut in,
Fun fact.
No. That was my first NHL game. First NHL game.
Hell of a game to get an introduction.
Yeah, one of my buddies happened to get tickets from work. Had somebody that he wanted to bring that just couldn't really go, so he's like, "Hey, you gonna be
Probably
in town?"
a chick.
No, supposedly it was his cousin. Apparently, so he's like, "Hey, my cousin can't go. Do you want to go?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And I got the vibe that he was trying to like hide me because anytime I whipped out my phone to take a picture, nah. I'm like,
what the hell?
Okay. So yeah, I might have dated his cousin a long time ago, so that might be why too.
Oh, hey, yeah, that old gag.
Yep.
Yeah. I know that is. Well, actually, you also have to see. Now, did it end badly? You don't need to say anymore. All right.
See, I don't have. I was actually gonna say I don't have Dave Chappelle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 queued up right now. But if I had it, that would have been playing right now.
You didn't need to say a fucking thing because the minute that I heard, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. All right, well, that answers that. Well, good night, everybody. You're listening to The Shoot. I'm your host, Daniel Burke, my co-host, Mac. Of course, you're listening here on YouTube on Diamond Podcast Productions, or you're listening on Spotify and Apple, as we are currently the official podcast of Pro Wrestling World Talks. So, it's been a very interesting week in the world of professional wrestling.
Long.
A very long week, but a very interesting week. And you just think to yourself, okay, maybe nothing will happen in the last 24 hours where AEW makes an ass of themselves. But they did. They somehow find a way. So we'll be talking about that at some point.
It's like Jurassic Park. Life finds a way.
Finds a way. And it just seems like to be an every week thing. And I also have today's ratings, folks, later, and it'll be.
I saw them.
Yeah. It's a doozy.
Spoiler.
Good sense.
Spoiler. No 700.
No. Lowest rated Dynamite in 3 years, going back to the pandemic era.
Yep.
Which. Both companies at that point were really suffering, but they weren't the only ones. I think there were a lot of media companies that were just dealing with, I don't know what the fuck to do, because I think everybody at some point within 6 months of the pandemic had watched pretty much everything that they possibly could, and were just like, I need to get out of the house. I need to get out of the house. It needs to be no.
You know, it's funny because we had talked about this, you know, during that time period, obviously, but I caught up on like so many documentaries. I caught up on the Michael Jordan one. I caught up on Tiger King of all things because I refused to watch it pre-COVID, or around the start of COVID, depending on where you were. But I was like, okay, and I watched so much television that I was just like holding back on, especially Netflix. And you look at it now, and it's just like, I don't even have time to do any of that shit anymore.
No, I just, for some reason, it's just like I don't have the time or the kind of psyche to just kind of binge television that much anymore. I don't know. It's like, I feel like I'm busier, or the headspace or something where it's just like I don't have the time or patience to kind of sit there and be able to binge watch it. I think we just burned it out. Yeah, we all just were like, we binged so much. We're just like, we can't do this again to ourselves.
Speaking of binge, you know what I still haven't watched? What? Since you know me so well, it might be a little bit surprising. First of all, I still have not watched X-Men 97 because I want to watch the first actual X-Men. I want to go through it again. That was one of my favorite shows around that time period, obviously, with Spider-Man and Batman and stuff. So I started it, but I didn't get through it. But the other one is Fallout.
Yeah, I'm very surprised you haven't seen that yet.
Yeah.
Very surprised.
Now that I'm seeing all the Fallout stuff, it makes me want to go back and start playing them
Play the games again.
Yep.
Luckily, if you have Game Pass, you should be good because pretty much they have the whole Bethesda library on there.
It's funny because I was thinking about buying them because I think like Fallout 3 was probably my favorite game for a long time.
Yes.
I loved 3. It was the one set in DC area. And I was like, oh, you know, maybe I'll buy it on Steam. And I was like, wait a minute. I'll just renew my Game Pass.
I'm a fan of Walton Goggins. Huge fan.
Right.
Ever since like The Shield. And then, of course, he was in Sons of Anarchy.
Right.
He has such great versatility.
He does, absolutely.
And also from what I have seen with Fallout, and from what I have seen with his performances in numerous, especially too, he's also become a real fixture in Tarantino films. From what I saw with his performance in Fallout, I have made the decision. I never thought I could say this about anybody because when they made the remake in 2010 of Nightmare on Elm Street, I said, they can never do this again. There's no one except Robert Englund that can do Freddy Krueger. That just never can happen again. And then I saw this, and I just said, if Walton Goggins wanted to be Freddy, I'm there.
Oh, absolutely.
Like completely believable, completely somebody that could pull it off, and I think has the charisma to do that. What a great character actor we are seeing with him. Just performance after performance that has just been excellent. So I am thoroughly looking forward to kind of where they go from here with this property. It has been getting rave reviews. I guess you could say it's pretty much as long as on par with The Witcher as far as the transfer from video games over to a series. And then I guess you could probably The Last of Us as well. You could probably also put it in that category.
The Last of Us was very good. Witcher. So, not to burst any bubbles or anything. Witcher's actually based on novels, which is the games are based on the novels. Yes. And it's not a perfect adaptation. However, those Witcher games were very well done. So the show follows more the books. The first season had an issue with pacing, but it was still very well done. Second and third season is kind of where they hit a groove. I do think they're falling into certain niches, though, unfortunately, that detract some of the excitement from them. Kind of like Game of Thrones did later on in its age. You know, I think Witcher is kind of falling into that a little bit too. my only issue, and I think it's a lot of people's issues, is kind of a wait and see on, Cavill leaving Geralt behind. I don't know how that's going to work.
It could be a disaster in the sense of, because it's very hard now to and the Patriots have selected a quarterback, Drake May, at 3. The Cardinals are now on the clock, so the Patriots have selected a quarterback. Little kind of angst, only because of the fact this is the second time they have done this in the last 4 years. Of course, it is a new regime, but still questions, because it's always a crapshoot, especially when you're picking. The draft is always one of those things. It's like, okay, you can hit here, and then other times you could really swing miss. I thought with Mac Jones that things were going to be in a great right direction, but apparently not. Especially the 2000, especially the last 2 years. Oh God! But the Patriots have selected another quarterback, Drake May, at 3, and now the Cardinals are on the clock. Please continue, Mac. I hate to.
No. It's I'm actually looking up his stats right now. So Drake May, showing 3 years for the North Carolina Tar Heels. 2022, he apparently broke some records.
Yes.
So we'll start there. He started 14 games. He went 342 for 517 with a 66% completion rate. Excuse me.
Yep.
4,321 yards, average 8.4 yards, 38 touchdowns that year, 7 interceptions with a rating of 157. Rushing, he went 184 for 698 yards for an average just shy of 4 with 7 touchdowns. In 2023, he started 12, went 269 for 425 with a completion percentage of 63.3, so a little bit lower. 2022 was his breakout year, so everything's lower. Right. Passing yards, 3,608, average 8.5, so a little bit higher. Touchdown obviously is going to be less compared to that year. 24 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, so only 2 more. It's not bad. Yeah,
no.
And he only started 2 less games, but I mean, even still, that's still not bad.
And the seniors play it real safe in their final years now, especially. Yeah. They really kind of minimize the damage, because if they are going into the draft, they pretty much know going into their senior year, it's like, well, I'm going to get drafted no matter what.
Right. Yeah.
So Caleb Williams did not play, I think, any meaningful football in the second half of the year.
Yeah, that's true. With that said, his rating was a 149, so obviously less, but we'll talk about the average. No, it's still fucking awesome. Rushing,
I feel like he's got more potential than Mac Jones, unfortunately.
I feel like that's just obvious. I'll say it that way. Rushing, he went 112 for 449 yards, so average of 4. Rushing touchdowns, however, his highest at 9. So I'm just going to do the career stats now. So games played 30, games started 26, completions 618 out of 952 for a 64%. Passing yards in those 3 years that are listed here, 8,018 for an average of 8.4, 63 touchdowns, 16 interceptions, just those last 2 years that I just mentioned, rating of 154.1, rushing 302 attempts, 1,209 yards, average of 4 with 16 rushing touchdowns.
Okay.
Listen, I'm just going to say this. I'm just going to say this now. And you kind of touched on it real quick. I'm just going to say it real quick. We have to remember that Bill's gone. We got Gerard Mayo as the coach now. And if he's going to be a gunslinging kind of offense, that kid might be a perfect fit.
Yes, I agree. You gotta. we were spoiled for so long. So it's
Yeah,
like,
we were.
And we also didn't want to have when Brady threw 2 or 3 interceptions in a game, I always would just be like, well, what the hell are you doing? But I have to realize that sometimes with these kids, with these guys now, especially, hey, you know,
Ooh, man.
they're gonna throw. They're gonna make these throws. They're gonna be impressive. Where you're just gonna be like, "Oh, it can sink or swim." Like Josh Allen to me though is and Brett Favre are 2 of the most frustrating quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. Because you can win a lot with that style, but also at the same time they're gonna make dumb decisions, and you're gonna lose a lot because of it. I mean, Brett Favre won a couple of MVPs in the Super Bowl because of it, and almost got the Vikings to the Super Bowl. So from that, I can give him his due. But, I look at Josh Allen, and it's just like every time he's been knocking on the door, it's always because of some bullshit. The Cardinals have selected Marvin Harrison Jr., by the way.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, so that's good for Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
Plus they had Hopkins. Hopkins left to go to Tennessee last year, so they really didn't have anybody decent in that receiving core. But now they got Harrison Jr., so that'll be interesting.
Yep.
They've always had a good basis for wide receivers, anyways, because they had Larry Fitzgerald for like years, and then they had Hopkins, and then of course now with this. So I feel like Harrison Jr. is in a good spot from that perspective. So hopefully he doesn't have some of the traits of his dad. I'm talking about off the field, not on. That's beyond that. So I guess we could start with WWE, where it's been more or less we're in that lull period. But
that was actually unintentional. That one was unintentional for a change.
Now that I can hear them, I'm just going to be like, oh, Christ.
You're going to crack every time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just literally going to. But WWE has been kind of in I wouldn't say funk, I wouldn't say lull, but it's an extended hangover from an extremely successful WrestleMania. And also with the draft, which is going to be starting up tomorrow. So we'll do a draft review next week, which the draft really kind of also won't be over because of the rules that I've seen where they can start doing trades. Like rosters will not be finalized until I think May 8th or something of that nature. So that means they can still do.
Well, not only that, but the champions, except for the women's tag champions, are all locked.
Yes.
They're not moving. And I was really surprised by that. They've never done that before that I can remember.
Not in recent years, no. I remember originally when they did it in 2002, they had the Undisputed Champion going between both shows. And then I think Raw had the Women's Championship, and then SmackDown had the Cruiserweight title. So they actually did have some sort of kind of separation, but they had one champion at that point, and they were working both shows. But that's not going to happen this time. Cody Rhodes is going to go to SmackDown, and he's going to stay on SmackDown. And then you have Damian Priest, who's the champion of Raw, and he's going to stay on Raw. Same thing with same thing. Bayley's going to stay on SmackDown, which honestly, I think, because for a while there was so much confusion. Because they created the World Heavyweight Championship for Raw. I remember the tournament, they had people from SmackDown in the tournament. I was just like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, this is the Raw Championship, yet they have people from SmackDown challenging for it. But that's that's going to be happening over this weekend. I guess it's going to start tomorrow, and then it's going to conclude Monday. So next week we'll be able to kind of give you a review and also set up a preview, because I also think that that same weekend is also where Backlash is happening. So it's going to be kind of a busy weekend for WWE. And this week was pretty busy, as we had a whole last week considered with Rhea Ripley, Rhea Ripley has been injured for an extended period of time now, where she had to forfeit the championship. They think she'll be back for summer. And we theorized that they were going to do something where the finals were going to happen at Backlash. That did not happen. Over the weekend, they made the decision that there was going to be a battle royal to decide the women's championship on Monday night. And it turned out to be the winner. I woke up to it. I woke up to Becky Hogan trending on social media. And I'm like, oh, good Lord. Becky Lynch is your Raw Women's Champion. No, they don't do it by brand, sorry. But Becky Lynch now, for the 7th time, is a women's champion in WWE. Number one, I don't understand the Hogan comment because it's not like she's back there and she's saying, it doesn't work for me, brother. This is the way it was booked. This is the way that they decided to go. I don't know if Becky wanted the championship. She was on vacation at the time. And then they called her back. They're like, yeah, hey. And she's like, all right, fine. I don't know if her contract's been settled either. So you're kind of taking a bit of a chance because it's like, but you could be out the door in a month because I think her contract, she said last month heading into WrestleMania that her contract was going to be up in the next 2 months. So it's going to be May next week. So we're talking 5 or 6 weeks now. So is this going to be an extended championship where Liv Morgan, or is it going to be transitional where Liv Morgan beats her in the next few weeks?
Transitional champion! Transitional champion!
We'll talk about a transitional champion later on to end this program. But not more or less a transitional champion, just somebody that never should have been champion ever. He finally got hindered this past week, unfortunately.
Hey, no spoilers on that one.
I'm not trying to spoil anything, but I'm just saying. But Becky Lynch is champion again. I don't disagree with it because it's like you want to. If you're going to have the title on Rhea Ripley, that's your top women's star. So you just want to be like, all right, I want to have the top women's star be my champion. If it's not Rhea Ripley, it's got to be Becky Lynch. It's an obvious kind of transfer A to transfer B. Your B plan, your backup plan. I feel you could have Liv hold the title up until Rhea's ready to return. We talked about it last week at great length. But putting the title on Becky Lynch is not a terrible idea. It's not awful. It's not something I think that could be scoffed at. That's the thing. It's everybody sits and they say, well, why is she well, she's got a book out. She's one of the most recognizable stars that they have in the company that's not Rhea Ripley, and Rhea Ripley is going to be out for the next 3 or 4 months. What do you think? What do they have? What if you put the title on Nia Jax, people are going to have a problem with it. You put the title on Liv Morgan, people are like, yay, we want Liv to be champion, but people are still pissed off at Liv because she injured Rhea Ripley. So what the fuck do you do? Like, where are you at? Like, what? Everybody's saying, oh, Becky Hogan. It's like, how? Mac, your thoughts?
I don't know, man. You could do worse than Becky Lynch. Like, let's start off by saying that. That's I think the first thing you have to say, right? But it's hard because this is the participants in this match. Candice LeRae, Indy Hartwell, Maxine Dupree, Ivy Nile, Caden Carter, Katana Chance, Chelsea Green, Piper Niven, Shayna Baszler, Zoe Stark, Nia Jax, Natalya, Liv Morgan, and Becky Lynch. So, looking at it, without NXT, you have Becky, Liv, Natalya, Nia, who have all been champions. Hi, Stephanie.
Max, shut up.
Wow, rude.
He's just new. He's like, "Hi, Stephanie."
Oh, there's more things.
Good night.
Good night.
Night. So just real quick, I don't know if you heard us talking last night, Dan, but we're gonna do a montage at some point of her just throwing shit at you.
Yes, no, that's been her plan for months.
Okay.
What?
That's been her plan, to do a montage of me just getting hit in the face with things. Yes, that's how she just. And then we would also throw in the clip of her last week, the
Yep.
clip a couple weeks ago as well.
Yep. Anyways, so only a few of these women have been a women's champion in the past. Shayna Baszler was in NXT, of course, as was Indy Hartwell. But I wouldn't give it to Indy. Obviously, I'm not going to give it to Candice LeRae or Maxine. Katana Chance and Caden Carter are great, but they're more of a tag team.
Especially after Maxine got buried like an hour earlier.
Yeah.
Like, how, you're going to put the fucking title on somebody that literally got buried in a segment earlier?
I mean,
It's
it would have
like,
been kind of funny, not for
Come
nothing.
on. I mean, it would have been funny, but at the same time, it's just...
No, it would have been awful, yeah.
It wouldn't have made no sense. Like, not the type of booking that... And Triple H, I don't think he was even going to do that. That would be something somebody else would do.
Right.
Redacted.
Yep.
That would be something he would do. He would just
We'll
be like,
also talk about
yes,
later.
fine." Yes.
I mean, what? Here is my issue with it. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. If I'm any of those other women aside from Becky Lynch, I'm pissed because this kind of shows he does not have faith in them. And I know there's going to be people who are like, "Oh, you're reading too much into it." Am I? Am I though? Why didn't he put the belt on him then? Why? You got a few of them that have been a women's champion before. Why not? And listen, I already said it, and you kind of echoed this. You could do worse than Becky Lynch. You absolutely could. But why can't you give it to somebody like Shayna? Why can't you give it to somebody like Natalya?
Because
Go ahead.
a battle royal, you can have someone that has been kind of, I wouldn't say underbooked,
Unsung is what I would
but
say.
unsung, someone that hasn't really done much. That's your perfect time to kind of make a deal like that, because you can make it a quote unquote fluke victory because they haven't been up on the upper card, but they're still considered a threat, right?
Well,
So Shayna winning could have made all the sense in the world.
dude, even Natalya winning could have made sense. She's been a women's champion before.
That's right. That's right. That's 100% right.
And not for nothing, if you want to talk about, like, in this match, right, just overall specimens, and I'm not saying put the title on her tomorrow, but what about somebody like Ivy Nile? Who's an absolute beast.
Yeah.
And could wreck all of them. Like, get her away from Maxine, especially now that Alpha Academy is probably going to turn heel. At least that's what the signs are showing, depending how you viewed Monday Night Raw. And you get her away from her that way by putting her with the belt. And then it's like, I don't want to say it this way because I feel like it's insulting to both of them to a certain extent, but it's like mini Rhea Ripley practically on Raw.
Right.
The Pitbull. And listen, you could make your cases for a lot of them. Like I said, and you mentioned it too, Shayna Baszler, she was an NXT Women's Champion. So was Indy Hartwell. Chelsea Green is probably one of the most unsung in this entire thing just because she plays more of a comedic character.
Yes. Chelsea Green has been absolutely outstanding since she has returned to the company.
Her character work is phenomenal.
Fantastic.
It really is.
Yeah, I cannot say enough good things about her. Yeah, I'm glad she's getting a shot too, because the last run she was with the company was snake bitten between injuries and just people not knowing how to use her. But
however you want. That's the funny thing. You tell her to do something, she'll do it, and she'll do it well.
it's like she's like got the versatility of like a Tony Storm. Tony Storm, however, is a great character, but she's also a great wrestler. Or I'd say Chelsea, I think, is a great character and a decent wrestler.
Serviceable. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, serviceable. But yeah, you could have Piper Niven. You could have. There's so many people. There's so many people on that roster. They could have just said, because a battle royal again, no one's losing anything. You're getting thrown over the top rope.
Exactly.
No one gives a shit that you were the last person thrown out. They don't care. That sets up a program too. It's like a pay-per-view match. You the last one to throw me out. It was bullshit. I want to face you at the pay-per-view. And, you know, you get a match out of it. You get 2 matches out of it. Like,
yeah, I mean that's part of my issue, and that's part of why I'm not mad that it's Becky Lynch. But again,
I'm not mad, but it's just you could just make a decision, and unless you're giving Liv more bad blood for Liv, more fire for Liv for this character, because again, she's doing all she can to run with this shit. She's doing all she can to. She already came out the last 2 weeks. She came out last week saying that she's got a hit list and she got Rhea and she's mission accomplished for her. She's already going that route, and either putting the title on her on Monday could have solidified that, or do you want her to win the title in a one-on-one match and make it more meaningful, like where Becky Lynch was a part of her hit list, so now she's got to take out Becky Lynch in a one-on-one match? Because it's meaningful if she won the battle royal, but if she beats Becky Lynch down the line in a pay-per-view match for the title one-on-one, say she wins clean, or she can't win clean. Let's say she did. Is it more meaningful that she beat Becky Lynch clean for the title, or that she won the battle royal?
I don't see. This is where I differ a little bit. I don't want her to win the title right now. I don't.
Right.
If they were going to do that, they should have had her win the battle royal. I'm going to say that first. Second, I think if you're going to enter a program with Becky Lynch and Liv Morgan, Liv should cost her the title at Backlash, whoever it's against. And then the next pay-per-view is Becky and Liv, whether there's a stipulation or not. And then that, depending on how Becky feels, could be like her go away, if she wanted it to. If she doesn't, if she wants to resign, I'm fine with that. My issue is, like I said, is that whether it's Liv or it's Ivy or it's Indy or it's Shayna, like there's so many people, which isn't even a big match, let's be honest, but there's so many people in this match that could have been champion too. And I just feel that, personally at least, it's a little bit of a disservice to all those women, because it literally could have been any of them. You did not need to call Becky Lynch back from vacation to carry this belt for the next 2 weeks. You just didn't.
No, this was the time for another talent that has been under the radar.
Thank you.
To make their time now, because Rhea was out, Becky was on vacation. It was now time for someone that nobody had really given a thought about, or even Nia winning the title, just keeping it warm or something of that, and also giving something for Liv maybe down the line. Yep. I don't know. There's so many. Yeah. I mean, do I mind Becky winning the title? No, because I love Becky. But Did they need to do this? No, they didn't.
Well, you mentioned Shayna, and just I think it's a good example because Shayna and Nia used to tag.
Yes.
So have that be a feud that could at least go for a month, if not maybe to the next pay-per-view after Backlash, and you could do it that way and it still be effective. The problem is, like you said, it's like nobody is mad that it's Becky. Like, great, good for her. She's another champion, has another notch on the belt. But it's like, it wasn't necessary. That's, I think, where a lot of it goes. And like you said, bringing that fresh talent to start something that maybe turns out great. You know, whether it's pushing Shayna into that direction, whether it's pushing, God forbid, Candice LeRae to that position, you're right, it gives them their moment. Whereas with Becky, she's already had a million moments, and I'm okay with this moment also, but it just should have gone a different way. And that's, listen, everybody has their opinion, but that's just mine.
I've always been on Shayna Baszler. I've always been a fan of Shayna Baszler since going back to the Mae Young Classic.
Yeah.
I've always felt she is someone you need in your women's locker room. Just because of the fact that she'll maintain order. She has that reputation from MMA and her collegiate background. And it's just, she's just one of those, I think, one of those talents. I'm like, all right, you're cool. Like, she just has this edge to her, this kind of cool factor also out of the ring where it's like she just seems like a decent, fun human being. But on top of that, in the ring, she's a killer.
Yeah.
And that's someone that I think I'm always going to be drawn to because she's always a threat. No matter what, she could lose 50 matches in a row. In my opinion, she's always a threat. This was her time, I feel like, to finally get her back on track because I just feel like that she's been criminally underutilized for a long time. And, it's also not her fault, some of the company that she keeps with her friends, but that's all I'll say on that. I'm sure that with some of the comments that has been made by her friend that I hope it doesn't. I don't think it would trickle down to her because I don't think that she even agreed with probably some of the comments that were made by certain people. But I don't know if that was it because I don't get it. I just don't understand why you use the Battle Royal as your crutch. Because you can sit there and say, okay, like we can pick somebody that hasn't really been doing much the last couple of years because the Battle Royal, no one's losing anything. Getting thrown over the top rope, you're not losing the match. The only time in wrestling that you lose is when you take a 3 count or you submit. When you're in a ladder match, when you're in a cage match, when you're a Battle Royal, there's always that out for talent because I didn't climb the ladder fast enough. I didn't climb the cage fast enough. I got thrown out of the ring like on a fluke. Like I got distracted, right? Like there's always that out. Always that out. And they didn't do that. And that's the surprising thing of just like, all right, we just went with the same old, same old. There's nothing wrong with the same old, but you're doing your talent a disservice. That's the problem. And, it's just, you have one of the most talented rosters on the planet. You also, you couldn't move somebody over from SmackDown to make the deal.
Yeah.
To make that go.
Or
like,
from NXT.
Why not
NXT,
Tiffany?
Man?
Why not Tiffany Stratton just get it? Why not, right?
I don't want her to get it yet, especially if they're going to enter a program with her and Bayley and potentially Naomi. But I see your point. I can't disagree either. Like, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with all the people on SmackDown anyways? Because we talked about this last week where Raw Women's roster, is a little light.
Yep.
And it kind of showed in that Battle Royal, if you ask me.
Showed so well. And they're going to have access to even more women, considering the deals that's going to be going on with Japan, with Dogara, and all those deals that they're going to be setting up with Gulia coming in at some point. I mean, this is women's wrestling right now, especially in WWE, is they have so many people in that pipeline that they could have just done something to kind of, hey, we're there, man. We got somebody. Instead, no, you went with an established name. There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. I understand. Maybe I would have done the same thing, but it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
it just doesn't make sense.
It's funny. We just got a message, both of us, from Mark, who's been on the show before, that is also referencing the Becky Hogan. As Dan goes to check it. I want to specify before we move on real quick that, we have our opinions. Our opinions are just that, opinions. You can like it, you can hate it, you can agree, you can disagree. But at the end of the day, it's not on Becky. This was a booking decision that they decided to make. I don't think Becky had any inclination to come back unless they had something for her, something quick. And sure enough, they did.
Yes.
And again, as I said, I'll reiterate it real quick before I move on. Transitional champion! Transitional champion! She's going to be transitional. She's probably going to go back on vacation or after Backlash. Unless they want her to work more dates, which they very well could if they decide to keep the belt on her. But we don't know that right now. We'll see. But
especially too, considering we know with sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Especially we know the extent of Seth's injuries, because she should be kind of also home, kind of relaxing, unless they only have her working 1 day a week. I don't know. I don't know if she's working house shows.
If she's
right
on
now.
Vacation, I doubt she's going to work house shows too.
Probably not.
But whatever they decide, I'm sure they'll take that against her her contract time, depending. If she only had X dates that she had to work, let alone the vacation, they might just say, okay, we'll get you on the back end or something. But we don't know that yet. There was, sticking with Raw, I guess, for now, I thought there were some good promos, obviously. We did touch a little bit on the Alpha Academy one. Not going to spend too much time on that one, just because, all Chad Gable is doing is just shitting on them. But I did like the Banger Brothers, or the artists formerly known as the Banger Brothers, Sheamus and Drew. You went from banger after banger after banger to burger after burger after burger. Listen, it was so cut and dry and so cheesy, but it worked. Drew McIntyre is just such a great heel, man. He really is.
Such an asshole, and I love him.
It is.
Like, it's just he's such a prick, and it's just that the thing about it is, it's like he's that prick that just says these things where you're just like, well, I gotta take this because you're just gonna claymore my head off, so I'm gonna take my leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's again. If he hasn't signed a contract yet, that the dollars just keep going up for him every single week, because they cannot afford to lose this guy right now. Especially too if Scotland, if Clash at the Castle is that going to be his night where he finally wins the World Heavyweight Championship? Because that seems to be the direction I think that they're probably going to go, which could make Damien wait for it.
Yeah.
Damien could be a what?
It's tough. I don't know. I don't know.
I was hoping you were saying that it's going to sing the song.
No, I was not going to. I was not going to.
Damn it!
I don't know if he's going to stay champion that long.
So, which would make him what?
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Okay.
I already did it twice. I'm not doing it again. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. Oh my god. No, I don't know if he will be. If he holds it that long, he won't be. But if he gives it up to Jey Uso, transitional champion, transitional champion. I love how I've made that a thing in like 2 minutes.
Yes, you have.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about Damian Priest because it's the same for Cody right now. Like Cody, I think obviously is going to be champion regardless. Damian Priest, I said this when we reviewed Mania, anyways, that I knew he was going to probably cash in. I don't know if he was going to get it, but he did. But you said it yourself when we started the show. It's like it's that prolonged hangover after WrestleMania. So we don't really know what we have yet, and that's the big thing. So when they had their promo, which I guess we could segue right to that, I thought Jay was only marginally better than Damian Priest. I don't think Damian Priest was awful, but it's like shooting barbs. It's like at nothing basically right now. All Jay could really get out is, tell mommy I said hey! And called him Dom Mysterio's bitch, which is another good line. And what was the other line he said? I forget it, man, but it's just, okay, great. Oh, you're the leader of Judgment Day because mommy's not here right now. It's, okay, cool. Are we going to shoot shots at each other, or are we just going to reference Rhea Ripley the whole promo? Like, no.
I mean, I don't know if they're going to take the title off Damian this quick.
I don't think I would.
No.
I will say that, but I also don't know if he makes the Clash champion either, like we were talking about.
Well, I can understand putting the belt on Jey Uso. I completely understand that. But Jey Uso, I also think it should be in the position because we're close to Money in the Bank. So that
True. That true.
Now is where the mid-carders can finally, that's their chance, right? To kind of, because the last couple of years, they have finally, I think, have been able to use the Money in the Banks, men's and women's, to essentially get like the talent that needs to get over. Like the guys who have needed to win it have won it. Damian Priest needed to win it. He won it. Io Sky needed to win it. She won it. Liv Morgan needed to win it. She won it. Big E needed to win it. He won it. Like they've been very, especially in the last couple, I think probably since like 2021, they have done everything they could possibly have done to make sure whoever wins it, it's meaningful, or it has some type of a tangible to it.
So hold on. Let me cut in real quick then. Do you think that's Jey Uso?
Yeah, I think Jay is in that echelon of somebody that I think that there's that tangible to do it. I think him challenging right now, I don't think it hurts him, but I think that him challenging and losing, I don't think it hurts him, especially too with the looming civil war with the bloodline, which I think could rear its ugly head at Backlash for the favor of Damian Priest.
Well, not only that, but just the numbers of Judgment Day period might.
Right.
But
also he's got Finn, at a certain point, I see Finn Balor challenging Damian Priest for the title. I don't know when. I don't know if they're going to do that switch or at least feuding. I sense that happening, especially now with Finn, because it was announced this past Monday that Finn Balor has re-signed with WWE, and he's staying there probably for the rest of his career. So he's going to finally get a world championship push at some point. Because you think about it, 2016, he only held the belt for a day. He had to forfeit the title due to injury, and so he's hungry. He hasn't had a world championship in a while, and it's natural where Damian is the asshole heel, and Finn, he's a natural babyface. He's a great heel though too, but Finn could make that babyface turn again, come back as a demon, and then decide to challenge Damian Priest and either take the title off him. But again, then you have the Drew McIntyre stuff at Clash of the Castle, which it's in Scotland. So you would think that that's going to be a coronation. Because again, it's not like before where someone's booked in their hometown and they lose. That was an old trope again, redacted. And if you're in AEW, you're going to go undefeated in your hometown, but that's besides the point.
Oh man, it's one of those things that it's definitely an engaging conversation because we just don't know right now. We still got a lot of time until then. Number one, but number two, the guy that I think might be good Money in the Bank is you said it earlier. You said yeah, and I was gonna be like, yeah, I think he might be good to win Money in the Bank.
That's true.
And I think he truthfully might need it a little bit more than Jey Uso does at this point.
That is true. That is very true. I think LA Knight is also in that position of, all right, he might need this a little bit more.
Right.
Because you look at Jay, and Jay, I think, is like his plan is already set for the next, I think, year, or at least for the rest of the year, because I really think that this Bloodline Civil War thing, that's going to consume from like the summer on.
Yeah, he's going to get dragged into it for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to be Jay, it's going to be Jimmy, it's going to be Roman. It's probably going to be against Solo, Toma Tonga, and then probably Jacob Fatu.
Right. Yep.
And so that's where they're going to stand there, which I think is going to be, it's going to be great. It's going to be great TV, but it's going to take, I think it might stall Jay's push a little bit, not too much.
Depends how long they take.
It was funny. It was funny too because he said this week that he's like, I know the Mania match with Jimmy disappointed. So it's like I think he's aware of the criticism that he's been kind of dealing with this the last month. It's almost like a month now. Jeez, it's 3 weeks since Mania.
I know. Yeah.
God,
crazy.
It feels like it was yesterday.
Feels like it like more to me months ago.
This is 2 years ago now, wasn't it? No, it was literally 3 weeks. What? Oh. But yeah, it'll be really interesting, I think, to see it'll be really kind of interesting to see where I think Jay expects things to go because I don't know if he's taking it hard and he thinks that this is kind of something that if it's really going to bother him prospectively. I guess Jimmy also is dealing with an injury now too. That's another rumor that's been kind of put out there. But the fact that I think that I don't know if it's going to wear on Jay. Just thinking about like his performance in the matchup because again, I just think it just happens. You think you're going to have great chemistry. You think you're going to lay it down. You're going to have a great one. And it just didn't work out. But I would not hold that against Jay and his main event push, to be quite honest. But I'm sure there's some out there that probably are holding it against him. Like, oh, well, how are you, if it's going to be like this, is his main event push going to be exactly like this? Is every main event match that he's going to be in just going to seem like it's non-interesting?
I mean, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case either as well, but I just will find out. I think the only thing really left to talk about on Raw since we started there, in my opinion, we're not going to go through each match. There's a lot to unpack there anyways if you did, but something we talked about last week, which was the return of Gunther.
Mm-hmm.
I like that they're keeping him out of the title picture as a comeback. I like that he's focused on King of the Ring. I think that's a good touch, and I think it's something that, outside of Money in the Bank can also elevate talent. We saw this years ago with Steve Austin. That was really the launch of Austin 316. It was the first time we cut that promo in the first place. You can make an argument for others as well. So having him focus on this is definitely not a negative. And then the turn on Vinci by Kaiser, who's probably out of Imperium now, I think.
I would say so.
Yeah, I would say so. And it seems like Gunther approves, obviously. So I would be interested to see what they do with Vinci, if anything, now. Because I don't think he's going to be very good on his own. I just don't. He's just a tag team guy.
Kaiser, I feel like, has a future. Gunther has a future. He was the third wheel.
He was, absolutely.
And I don't know if you're going to be able to repackage him. So it's one of those deals of, sorry, dude. The question is if they're going to get a third guy or they're just going to leave it the way it is. That'll be kind of interesting because I don't know who they'd put in that third spot. Unless he could get like Cesaro on his contract. That's like the only thing I could think of.
I mean, you could go with a female.
You could.
And have like a manager.
You very well could.
Which I'm sure Kaiser would love for that to be Tiffany Stratton. Good segue there. So for those that obviously don't know, Kaiser is real life dating Tiffany Stratton. So that could be something, and she fits, the whole German vibe, so to speak. But that could be something they could do. Have a tag team where he is still the head talent, him being Gunther, obviously, but maybe they also go for tag titles too. They've done stuff like that in the past, so it could be very well trending in that direction. Maybe they do get a third guy. It really could be anything. But Raw overall wasn't bad. It was kind of tired for me. Mm-hmm. They had other matches that were decent. I didn't really care about Santos taking Dom's place, whatever fake injury Dom actually has.
I heard it's legitimate.
I heard the same, but it's just random to see him have a sling on his arm exactly like fucking Rhea did the week before.
Yeah. It's also interesting the way that they were teasing something with him and Liv. What the fuck are they doing with this?
I mean, I think that's natural progression because if she wants to keep fucking around with Rhea on that end, take everything, including custody of Dominic. For those that don't get that joke, just look it up. Previous wrestling history, so to speak. SmackDown felt kind of the same, especially for a 2-hour show. It felt kind of sluggish at times. We finally found out who Cody is going to face at Backlash for the undisputed WWE Championship, which is exactly what we said the week before.
Yeah, we did.
AJ Styles.
He got his win back for Mania.
Yep, he definitely did. Which I said it last week. Like, if you don't think it was going to be AJ, I'm sorry. I have other things to sell you then, I guess. Yes. We also saw a glimpse, finally, of the WWE Tag Team Championship belts, which kind of harkened back to the older ones back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, I feel like, without all the coloring. I was surprised, weren't you?
It was also the same design from like the 80s as well. That was probably the longest belt design that they had, because that was on for like at least 15 years. Like that was an early design, I think, from like the mid '80s, like '85, '86, all the way through like 2000.
Yeah, I remember Road Dogg and Billy Gunn having those, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
They
I
had the
remember
color on the panels more than these do. But other
I remember
than
seeing
that,
those belts at Mania 1.
yeah.
Like Sheik and Volkov winning those and then holding them.
Yep.
And then I remember like Edge and Christian having them. The Hardys, I think, maybe the Dudleys had them too. At one
I think the
point.
Dudleys did too, yeah.
Yeah, it was that those belts were the belts. Like that was the design. And then of course I remember when they did the brand one, it was the SmackDown had that design, but it was different. And then the World
Right.
Tag Team Championship on Raw was similar, but not really. It was some like subtle little changes to the design. But yes, these kind of harken back to those to that old design, which I'm all for. Anytime they want to go back to those like throwback old designs, I'm cool with. Especially when they made that IC belt. When Cody did that, when
Yeah, we talked about that last week
it
too.
was so sick.
Yep. The other thing on SmackDown that happened, which I kind of alluded to a little bit before when I was talking about Tiffany Stratton, was Naomi and Bayley had their WWE Women's Championship match, and no contest because Tiffany Stratton just flattened both of them. So I will be curious to see if that ends up being a feud, for whether it be for Backlash or maybe they'll make it a triple threat match. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I forgot about the line. I have to go back to the tag championships for a second. I don't know if you watched that segment, but I cackled when Nick Aldis called them a clown down. Such a great line.
Clown.
I cackled so hard. A clown down.
Nick Aldis is a tremendous like. I do not have a bad thing to say about the two GMs because Adam Pearce and you know what I love about them is the fact that they're not like over the top. They're authority figures.
Yeah.
But they're authority figures in the sense of they're not like a Bischoff, like where they never make decisions where I sit there and I said, you're just being an asshole. It's like every decision they make seems to be like, well, it's going to be fair. And everything's been fair. But I do love it with Nick when he just comes out with these random one-liners. He just seems to be having a blast.
He really does. It's just hilarious. Him and Adam Pearce, honestly.
Yeah, I know. Both of them are just having fun.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I didn't care for SmackDown too much. The Fatal 4-Way for the tag title number one contendership was okay. Street Profits, I feel like everybody knew was going to win. Just so great in the ring, and I think with Theory and Waller, it's just like, all right. Probably going to lose that match unless there's some kind of interference again, but okay. AJ and... Man, I'm blanking. I don't know why. LA Knight were just exactly what you thought you were going to get from them, especially for a second match. The women's championship match, I know it was no contest, but I honestly figured that was the direction it was going to go. It's just,
Right.
But the segment with Tamatonga and the Bloodline, I don't get it. I don't get it. Why Kevin Owens? I just don't understand. Like, it just seems like, hey, we're the new Bloodline. Let's go attack KO. Like, it's just kind of weird.
Like,
there was no build to that at all.
I don't understand why all of a sudden it goes to Kevin Owens. It's just like, because he hasn't been a problem really with them for a while.
Almost a year, honestly.
Yeah, and now all of a sudden, randomly, it's just like, we're going to screw with Kevin Owens. It's like, plus, really, after all the stuff that's gone on with Solo, with his win-loss record and stuff, it's like, if he can't, I'd be like, dude, you're not a threat right now.
What's really funny to me about that statement is I was thinking about it after we did the show last week and after this whole, Bloodline thing, and especially the KO thing, too. And I went back to when he's like, so winning matters and losing matters. And, Paul's like, yeah. I just kind of think like, well, dude, you're like 40-0. God knows when, so clearly it matters, but just not to you, apparently. But hey, you're 0-40, but apparently you're the tribal chief now. Like, what? Just cracks me up.
Yeah, this is one of those ones of like they've done this before, where it's like all of a sudden this guy can't win a match, and all of a sudden he's in the main event push the next day. It's like I've seen this before. I understand what you're doing, but people see a lot of big things in solo, and I'm just like,
I might have a year and a half ago, but not now.
no. It's just I haven't seen anything where I'm like, oh, that was sick. I think I honestly think when they debut the Jacob Fatu, he's gonna fucking put that guy to shame. Because I've seen Jacob Fatu in the ring, and it's just like he's miles better than this fucking guy. Like he is miles better. He might be the best in ring worker of that entire family right now, except Roman. But Roman is in like a class by himself. But just because of the psychology and stuff that he's been able to employ. But Jacob Fatu can literally do anything in the ring. So it'll be interesting when he debuts.
Well, it will be, because I really don't know when it's going to be. Hasn't he been signed for a while at this point too?
Yes, apparently he has. I just think that they were waiting until this period where
Could be.
They needed to debut more kind of family members. There was talk that some of these guys may have debuted at WrestleMania, which
I heard
glad that
too,
didn't happen.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, it's just you didn't need introductions like that.
No, Tama Tonga, when they introduced him, was the perfect timing.
Yeah,
it really
I feel
was.
like when Jacob Fatu debuts, I feel like that'll be probably in the same boat.
Yeah, it'll probably be a pay-per-view that time. It depends. Yeah. If they put something together for Backlash, he'll probably debut at Backlash. That's my guess, anyways. Right. However, not so much debuts, but maybe returns. You happen to catch any AEW this week, Dan?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So, I mean, we could start with the pay-per-view. I think that might not be actually a bad place to start. So, Dynasty was this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
After Dan had mentioned Collision, I decided not to watch that. I did not watch Dynasty either. I did catch the clips. I did catch a good amount there. I thought I had it pulled out. Here it is. Here we go. So this was a lot to unpack. I have to say that looking at their matches versus what WWE puts on for a PLE, dude, they like stuff the card.
Mm-hmm.
It's just holy shit. So there are 3 0-hour matches, which is the pre-show. So apparently this, I'll just do them in order. Title for title matches, AEW World Trios Champions, the acclaimed with daddy ass Billy Gunn, versus Ring of Honor World Trios Champions, the Bullet Club Gold, Jay White and the Guns. And
Jay White on the pre-show.
Yeah, that's, I wasn't even going to touch that, but yeah. So the Guns won that. I don't even have to scroll down for that. I remember that. Before that, apparently, Bleacher Report does this all weird. This is the website I have open right now. Was Trent Beretta versus Matt Sydal. So Beretta defeats Matt Sydal. The other one was Orange Cassidy and Katsuyori Shibata versus Shane Taylor and Lee Moriarty. Because that's a match, apparently. So Orange Juice Cassidy, or whatever his name is, and Shibata defeat Taylor and Moriarty. I don't think anybody really saw any different outcome to that, unfortunately. And then we get into the matches for the cards itself. And this just... as Dan's going to go smoke because apparently he needs to hear this card, man. The AEW Continental Championship, Pac versus Okada, and Okada wins to retain. I think he was one of the only champions to actually retain at this pay-per-view. Next match was Adam Copeland, Eddie Kingston, and Mark Briscoe versus House of Black because, apparently Alistair or Mordecai, whatever the hell he's calling himself these days, can't wrestle single matches. I don't know what's up, but I don't think he's had a single match in a while. House of Black wins this match. Babyface apparently did like back-to-back-to-back spears or something like that, but other than that, it wasn't much. This was a match here that the champion did not retain, and it was the TBS Championship, Willow Nightingale versus Julia Hart, and Nightingale wins. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, yep, here it is. After the match, Mercedes Moné predictably made her presence felt and stared Nightingale down. Their much-anticipated rematch official for May 26th in Las Vegas at Double or Nothing.
Fucking Christ.
Yeah, I saw this where she came out, and I'm just like, wow, that's tacky. It was just bad. AEW International Championship match, Kyle O'Reilly versus Roderick Strong, and Strong defeats O'Reilly. The next match was the FTW Championship match, Hook versus Chris Jericho.
Oof.
And the chants of the crowd.
Please retire.
Go home.
Go home, Jericho.
Yep.
Fozzy sucks.
Fozzy does suck.
They do.
And apparently
Except for
he
one
came
song.
out to a new song on Wednesday from Fozzy, which just, oh my God.
I said this earlier, and I firmly believe this. If Chris Jericho was to leave AEW and go to WWE tomorrow, the building would explode if he went to WWE. But the problem is, and so there's many theories out there right now with Jericho. One of them is that he clearly doesn't give a shit. He's just there for the money. Two, he mostly it's just every scenario pretty much is like he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't give a shit. He's just there for the money. Or three, he's oblivious to the whole thing. So it's because the last 4 months, they have wanted him gone. They have wanted him off their TV. And I'm not talking about the AEW promotion like itself, their management. I'm talking about the fan base. They have made it loudly clear they do not want Chris Jericho on their program anymore. And they keep pushing him out there. So
it's funny you mentioned that because anytime I go through the Bleacher Report recaps, basically we'll call them, they give you like little bullet points, right? Like top moments or takeaways or whatever. The last takeaway here for this match is incredibly insightful to what you were just saying. The boos for a potential Jericho victory after 2 Judas effects were not reflective of a crowd that didn't want the heel to win, but rather a guy they simply have no interest or desire to watch compete anymore.
No, it's just... I've never been a real Jericho fan. I never have. Like
it is known.
It has been so well known to people. There have been a few years I have liked him, but for the most of his career, I have always felt that he's just been extremely overrated. I think he's a great in-ring talent. But I also think that a lot of times he's just too full of his own shit. The way that he is booked in AEW, it's like Hogan at his worst in WCW, and he draws a tenth of what Hogan did.
You're talking like dimes to dollars, yeah.
Like dimes to dollars.
Yeah.
I'm going to say he's drawn a dime. I will say that.
That's actually why I said
Chris
it.
Jericho.
That's actually why I said it.
He's probably drawn 3 dimes to Hogan's dollar. I will say that he's drawn 3 dimes. Like that's a trademark if he wants to, Chris. You can buy it from me. Chris Jericho has drawn 3 dimes in the wrestling business.
You're a lot nicer than I would be.
But one of them was not the him beating Austin and Rock in the same night, which Jesus Christ,
Yeah, because,
I've never seen.
Okay, so hold on, real quick. I'm sorry to cut you off, but this needs to be said. The reason is because in that match, and much like any of his WWE matches, let's be realistic for a second, he was not the draw of the match.
Never.
Let alone the card itself. And in that match specifically, he is not the draw. The other two are the draw. Whether you want to say separately or conjointedly, they're the draw together, that's fine. Chris Jericho is not the draw.
And if someone wants to argue with me, well, he was the draw in 2019. AEW was the draw in 2019. It was not because of Chris Jericho. Jericho, the only thing that he was able to do was because the wrestling fans were already sick of him then. 2018, 2019, people were just like with Jericho. Like I feel like in 2016, 2017, he peaked out. If he left after the list, it would have been fine. People would have just been like, oh my God, tremendous. But the last couple of years, it's just been terrible.
Yeah.
Just fucking terrible. And people talk about Flair ruining his legacy. People talk about Hogan ruining his legacy at the end. This is up there.
Yeah.
This is essentially up there of guys who are just by the day. And you just look at it and you just think, I don't know if he's oblivious to it because this is not the same heat that you're looking for, Chris. This is the heat of, you got to get the fuck out of here. You got to go. Either you leave the company and retire or you go away for 6 months. That's it. And you need to do it now and you need to do it fast.
I will have one singular choice, and I would just tell him to retire. I wouldn't even give him the choice to go away for a while.
It's you got to have that conversation.
Yep.
He is detracting to your business, and I saw the ratings. He's detracting to your business. You need to pull the plug on him, and just say, I can't.
Yep.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Because let's move on. So the next match of this pay-per-view was the AEW World Women's Championship. Challenger Thunder Rosa, former champion, quite some time ago, last year I believe, versus Timeless Toni Storm. I didn't look at the card when I was watching some of these, and I was like, who the fuck is Toni Storm fighting? Until I realized it was Thunder Rosa. She looks so different than I remember a year or two ago that I couldn't even recognize her.
Yeah, she changed her look big time.
Yeah, she did. It's I don't know. Toni Storm, I feel like is just going to be champion for a while, which I'm not disappointed at. She's putting on just great work right now. We'll have to talk about the press conference when we talk about this too. So she kind of made a dig at Cody and Triple H in the after press conference. Anthony, I'll never ask you to come to the ring to celebrate with me. Which was not a bad promo at all, honestly.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a bad line. It's just though, fucking really.
Yeah, it's unnecessary. But we talked about this last week too. It's just like they
but they can't help themselves.
They can't. I know.
It's like every fucking time. It's like, number one, they don't need to do the pressers. They really don't. Every time they do a presser something.
Don't tell that to Dave Meltzer. You can't say that. Just messing with you.
I know, but I'm thinking about it now, and I'm just like, yeah, because it's the only time that someone is actually picking him to do anything. It's not like they picked him to play like dodgeball in school when he was in grade school. He was always the last guy picked.
Wait, are we still talking about Meltzer, or are we talking about Tony now?
No, we're talking about all of them.
All right, fair
Fuck.
enough.
Alvarez too.
Oh
Shit.
God, yeah.
Go on. Sorry.
No. I just it's a situation where I don't know if they need to not do them, but I would
I feel
make
like
this
I'm
argument.
going on 15 rants tonight.
I know.
I'm sorry.
You're good. Don't worry about it. I would say this, especially since they're moving to a monthly pay-per-view, kind of like WWE does. I think they should not do them every pay-per-view.
For now.
That's fair. I just don't think they should do a press conference after each one. It's going to be way too much. Anyways, moving on. So the next match was a banger. I have to say it. Will Ospreay versus Bryan Danielson.
When Jim Cornette is complimenting it,
Yeah.
you know it's a fucking like it's up there. When Jim Cornette is complimenting it and talking about how great of a match it is, that tells you something. It is brilliant. It is a fantastic matchup. Meltzer though needs to calm the fuck down. He needs to calm the fuck down because you cannot call it the greatest match in the history of the United States.
I would make the argument it's the best match in the history of AEW.
Yes, I will make that argument.
I don't think it's in the history of the United States.
No, not even close.
I'm not gonna say it's close, but I'm gonna say it's up there.
It's up there.
It depends how you want to quantify it, right? Do you quantify it in its own category, or do you quantify it along with WWE matches? Because, and I feel like that needs to be said too. The styles are very different. The AEW style and the WWE style are incredibly different, and the style of wrestling that Ospreay himself wrestles, I would make the argument to say, is also in itself very different. Maybe even different from the AEW style. If they have one that you could say, it would be different. So in that context, you could make an argument that it's up there. Is it the best overall? I don't think so. It could definitely well be a match of the year candidate, though, I feel like.
No, I without question. I feel like at the end of the year, if this isn't the match of the year, then something would really have to blow it away.
Absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
And as good as Cody and Roman was, this was so much more different.
It was a different type of drama, even too.
Completely different type of drama.
Yeah.
It was just, it as much as I have crap on Daniel Bryan at times, especially recently, especially with his injury history and things of that nature, kind of a lot of it has to do with the fact of, dude, I want to see you have a good quality of life.
Yeah.
Like that's
absolutely.
mostly it. That's my entire thought process. But he turned the clock back on this one. Like they both
absolutely.
did. They both, but Brian especially, he turned back the clock, and it was fantastic to watch. Kudos to both guys. I can't find a hole and sit there and say, oh, is it as great as everybody says it is? Yeah. Is it the best match in the United States? No.
Well, in the history, yeah.
In the history of the United States. Is it in the top 25, top 50? I would say absolutely.
Oh God, yeah.
Without question. But I'm not gonna I can't put it in that category. Not yet, anyways.
Not yet. Yeah, I agree.
It's got to be one of those things of a repeat viewing,
Which, yeah, we're definitely going to repeat view that match at some point when we have time. So the next match, moving on from there, is the ladder match for the AEW Tag Team Championships, FTR versus the Young Bucks. I feel like if anybody didn't think the Young Bucks were going to win this match, I don't know what to tell you. But we also saw the return of Jack Perry. Jungle Jim Jack Perry. Which we'll talk about that later. We're not going to dive into that until we get to Dynamite in a few days here. But the final match of the card, at least from what I'm reading here, AEW World Championship match, Swerve Strickland versus Samoa Joe. And if you look at the top left of the screen or top right, depending on your viewing, you will see your new AEW champion, Swerve Strickland.
Absolute right call.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's all I'm going to say. Just, it needed to be done.
Absolutely. Like, it was the absolute right call. Doesn't hurt Joe because he's still Samoa fucking Joe. Especially when
it's also like pushing 50.
Yeah, but he's been fucking great, man. He is one of the most consistent performers in wrestling history in the last 25 years. But he didn't need this. He was I wouldn't say he was a transitional champion.
you were waiting for it that time.
But here's the thing, and I hate to burst people's bubble. And I hate to burst Swerve Strickland's bubble a little bit here. But the way that I feel and the way that the direction is going to go here, Swerve Strickland, I am so happy that he is the AEW World Champion. I'm happy for him. I was rip shit a few years back when WWE released him. I'm like, this is a massive mistake. And he's proven why it was a massive mistake. Out of all the releases in the company, there was only from that company in the last couple of years, I said the only two that's going to come back and bite them on the ass is this and Malachi Black. And the other one, they have really screwed the pooch on that one.
Yeah.
But
they both did. Let's be real.
Yes.
I just think that for what AEW does with him, with Malachi Black, Aleister Black, it sucks. It sucks.
It does.
And I hate to use it in this context, but I have to, is that especially with the unfortunate and untimely passing of Bray Wyatt, bringing him back now as like a big evil would work.
Yes.
Because aside from certain players, which I can't believe we're going to put Karrion Kross in this category right now, but I have no choice. You have no real dark aura character. And even Karrion Kross, you really don't either, but he's the closest one right now. And that's sad. So if you're going to bring somebody back, it should be him.
Yes.
Just to fill that gap. But at the same token, to remain the focus on Swerve here, yeah, they screwed this up. Whether it's, I don't know if they knew what they had or what, man. Like, I just don't know. Or maybe he just wasn't happy and they decided, hey, we'll just release you then. I have no idea. All I know is it was stupid.
It was so dumb. And it was like, and Shawn Michaels anointed this guy like he really had like high hopes for him. And then this was a part of those idiotic moves because Vince got pissed off because NXT did not beat AEW. So it was just like, that's it. We're fucking strip mining it to the core. We're literally going to the studs on this, and we're going to work it back from the ground up. They got rid of so many guys, so many that were anointed, handpicked by Triple H himself, because including Samoa Joe, the guy actually that he beat for the title. He was involved in that situation. So is William Regal. Regal now is an executive working for the company again, working for WWE again, and beside the right-hand man for Triple H. Swerve Strickland, however, absolutely the right decision, absolutely the right call. However, I feel like he is a transitional champion for Will Ospreay at Wembley.
Yeah, I don't want to sing the song again, but yeah, it's the same thing we talked about with Drew and Damian Priest, where it's in Scotland. It's going to make sense for Drew to finally cross that bridge and hold the belt more than 5 minutes. I say that obviously thinking of WrestleMania, but I think it just makes sense because it's going to be a huge pop. Huge. Whether that's from Damian Priest or not, we'll have to see. I think it would make sense for that, but I don't know. But with Wembley and the prospect of Swerve and Will Ospreay, I just think you're right. I can't foresee any other real pathway for them. And it's weird to say that because I still feel like they shouldn't put the belt on Ospreay yet. I don't know why I feel that way. I just do. Maybe because I just feel like, especially after last Dynamite, which we'll talk about this week in a second, where it's like, oh, Triple H, you don't know anything. You don't know what you're talking about. You just fucked your way to the top. It's like, dude, I don't need that pettiness anymore. I just don't care about that. You talk about that stuff and it makes me want to turn the TV off, not keep watching. So maybe it's a place of immaturity that I think he has a little bit sometimes, but can't deny the guy has talent.
No.
Especially whether you watched him prior to this past Sunday or just started watching then, you see it. The guy is phenomenal. And he put on this clinic. It's just awesome. He's just incredibly fun to watch. But I don't know if I just want him to be champion yet. That's just me, right? And this is the whole thing with what people were saying previously about Cody. It's just oh, well, it's too soon. It's okay, well, when is it not soon? And same thing with Damian Priest cashing in. It's oh, it's too soon for him to cash in. And maybe those times it was. Maybe the whole plan the whole time was WrestleMania. We'll never know. But, that's how I feel. It's just I feel like with him it is too soon. I don't know why I feel that way. I just do. But, so that was the pay-per-view. I'm not going to talk about everything that happened on Dynamite because, man, when I read this stuff, I was just like, what?
Yeah. It was not well received.
So you have the numbers. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I wasn't just talking about the ratings either.
We might as well since we're talking about how bad it was received.
Well, no, but I was talking about how people on social media was. It was everybody was like, "Oh, this is one of the worst episodes ever," and then of course
I did hear that. Yeah.
Later on with the end, where so the ratings for this week, AEW Dynamite, 683,000 viewers, 18 to 49, 0.23. This is their lowest total viewership in 3 years since January 6th, 2021. Which they had a legitimate excuse that night on why they would have a low rating, considering the fact that everybody was probably watching cable news. So that I'll give them that. I will give them that night as an excuse of why their ratings were that low. Okay? I'm not going to be that much of a prick and be like, oh, that night I'm like, oh, that's why they were low that night. Oh, okay, January 6th, 2021. No idea why people were watching cable news that night. None whatsoever. So they came in last night at 792. That was their 8 o'clock hour. So that's a pretty good. Their lead in at 792.
It's not bad.
By 8:15, they were at 716. 8:30, 709. 8:45, 890. They were at 694. By 9 o'clock, they were down to 629,000.
Sweet. I'm sorry. What was the lead in again?
Their lead in was at 792. So within 1 hour, they lost 170,000.
So not only that, but I love that you like to talk about the Big Bang Theory lead-in. By the way,
yes,
you missed that this week. Sorry. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was a 917 the week before for the lead-in.
Yes.
So close to 200K drop from week over week for the lead-in.
Correct. And then of course, but so at the 8th, the lowest. Here's the most concerning one because they hit 694 at 9. So I think it's 9 o'clock. They were at 629. 659. They were at 9:15, 9:30. They were at 659. The Don Callis segment at 9:45. The John Moxley and the Powerhouse House Hobbs match, which was for, of course, the IWGP Championship. So
Correct.
this
Yep.
is it went down to 607,000 viewers.
So hold on. Before we even talk about like individual matches and stuff like that, and lead-ins and stuff like that as well, let's just remember one fact here. This is the first show after a fucking pay-per-view,
Right.
and you
Right.
cut like what 150 to 200K off of
Yep.
the lead-in viewership, and then you
Yep.
drop views that consistently. And like you said, especially for IWGP World Championship match, and you're not getting them back?
607,000. Mind you, they did gain like 30,000 viewers for the overrun in the 9:45 segment, which of course we'll talk about in a moment.
Right.
But that is
not
concerning.
good,
When Moxley is drawing at 9, because he's one of your biggest stars, and he's also one of the biggest stars in wrestling the last decade, and he's drawing at 609,000 viewers for his segment in a world title match, by the way, that's not good. Like, it's just.
Well,
That's
again,
not
for me, it's like it's not even the fact that about Moxley or Strickland or whatever. It's the fact that this is the first show after a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And let's be real, like you and I and the listeners, viewers, you guys know we talk a lot of shit about AEW.
Yep.
This was a good pay-per-view.
It was. It was very good.
Whether
It was
it
a very
be
good
on
show.
paper or the actual pay-per-view itself and watching it, it was a good pay-per-view.
Very good.
To
yeah.
drop nearly, like I said, 150 to 200,000 views week over week on your lead-in after a pay-per-view
Yeah.
that was great is, in my eyes, very substantial. You had great matches. You had Jack Perry return, which a lot of people were questioning when that was going to happen. And you had great matches themselves. You had a good press conference that people talked about. I mentioned the Tony Storm part.
Yes.
To then drop all those views week over week after a pay-per-view, I just can't believe it. I just can't. You and I talked about this during the week, though, that a lot of wrestling pundits, as it were talking, ourselves included, about how good this pay-per-view was.
Yes.
And the pundits and ourselves were kind of wondering, like, okay, is this the writing of the ship? Is this where they have a formula now? They're going to do monthly pay-per-views now. Is this what we can start to expect? And some of them were asking, okay, those questions, but then, or are they just going to fall in the same traps that they always do? And I'm just going to kind of segue right now with how Dynamite ended on Wednesday this week. I just think they're going to fall right in those same fucking traps that they always find themselves in.
Tony Khan said, I believe in 2020, 2021, he said that he was never going to be on camera. He was not going to be an on-camera presence at all.
Well, not only did he lie, but he brought his father in too.
Yeah. And also the week of the NFL draft, mind you. Not just when your importance, I'm sorry, should be on My team that I own, we're entering the draft again. We're in the top 20. We should kind of know what the hell's going on. No, I'm going to get Meltzer drivered on air, and my dad's going to come out and show concern at the end. It's like, what the fuck am I watching?
So hold on. So just to clarify, since if you're just skipping through the show and trying to get to certain points and stuff, who does that, by the way? You talked about the fact that we're recording this on a Thursday, which is night one of the NFL draft.
Yes.
So the question I have for you, Dan, is Tony Khan wearing his neck brace tonight?
I've seen the pictures. He is. I guess he is wearing a neck brace.
So I made this reference to Dan, and I might as well make it on the air too. He's a fucking disgrace. Phil Leotardo. He's going to wear that thing for a year.
So the NFL Films crew is actually following him this week.
I heard about that, yep.
Because of
the draft.
Because he's doing the double duty thing, and then he's going to book tonight, and then, of course, he's going to do the draft the next... And then he's still going to book on Saturday for Collision. So they're going to catch all of this. And, of course, it's going to be great TV. Well, it's going to be great for the NFL film audience of just seeing this. Look, the neck collar thing worked for Andy Kaufman in 1982 when he did Letterman. Okay? It worked then. But that was also when it was still considered legitimate. The cat's out of the fucking bag. It's been out of the bag for fucking years. The last time I think somebody really took it seriously is when Sandman got blinded for ECW. Or when Shawn Michaels got the enziguri from Owen Hart and then collapsed in the ring. But we're supposed to believe that you took a weak shot to the stomach, which you sold like death, and then you're going to take the Indie Taker, which is a move that you were 6 inches off the ground. There's no way you're going to get hurt. There was no way you're going to get hurt. I've seen those guys with that tombstone. They are very safe with that move. You never hit the fight. You never see anybody's head hit the ground. Very safe with that. Like that's one thing I can say about the Bucks is that they are very safe with that maneuver.
Dude, I mean, not only that, but Tony Khan looks like a wet noodle. Like
he does. Like
he could have been like certain
like death, man.
Yeah, dude. He even sold like the microphone gut punch like death.
Ugh. I would have enjoyed it though if I would have had that replaying in my head if he got Rainmaker by Okada. Like I was waiting for it too. I was just waiting for that because a part of me would have just been like, take his head off, take his fucking head off. I want to see that in the fifth row. It's fucking embarrassing. I'm just gonna say it. It's fucking embarrassing. He is embarrassing himself. He's embarrassing his father. He's embarrassing the professional wrestling industry with this carny fucking bullshit that we're past this. We're fucking past this now. We should be past this now. Instead, we're not. We got to still deal with this unreal horseshit of just this guy that just sits there on a constant fucking basis. He's on Twitter. He's on social media. He's looking at chat rooms. And he's getting these booking ideas from these people that have never run a wrestling company. Neither have you, Tony. Like, you had figure feds when you were a kid. We all fucking did.
Yeah.
So did I.
Yep.
I'm not going to take my WWE universe and start my own fucking wrestling company and book all the shit that I do in the goddamn video game and make it real in a fucking wrestling and in real life. It's not going to happen. I use fucking legends, guys that have been retired for fucking 20 or 30 years. So it's already obsolete. Those guys aren't going to come out of fucking retirement. It's a fucking time capsule for a reason. But you sit there and it's just like, fuck you.
So you gotta check out the screen for a second. I found the GIF. So for those that don't know, that is Phil Leotardo, a character on The Sopranos, after Tony hit him with his car, causing a car accident, and
because he owed him money.
Yeah, because Phil owed money. And that's how I feel Tony Khan is going to be. He's going to be looking at that for a long time. Looking like that, excuse me, for a long time. But so let's talk about it real quick, okay? Because we've talked about it, but we didn't really explain it. So at the end of Dynamite on Wednesday night this week, Tony comes out with Jack Perry. The suspension is done. Jack Perry basically says how much AEW means to him and how he just wanted it to succeed before he then jabs Tony in the gut with the microphone. Then the Bucks and Okada come out acting concerned, and then as Dan said, they give him the Meltzer driver, which I have to say is the worst. Just kowtowing to freaking Dave Meltzer in the world. Just stop it. Ironically enough, opposite of that picture.
5 stars.
Yeah,
5
seriously.
stars. 5 stars. 5 stars.
Seriously. So opposite that picture, I put it up, which I thought was very telling, but after that, they announced that Kenny Omega will be on the next Dynamite next week on May 1st, which just...
I don't think he's cleared, by the way.
I don't think he is either. I think it's going to be a non-wrestling capacity.
I think people are thinking that he's cleared.
It's like,
absolutely. He's not cleared, guys.
He's not cleared. He's not booked. He's not booked.
What they might do is they might do an attack angle.
That's what I think too, yeah.
Which is why do you... I felt like you're kind of giving that away, too. When you already announced that he's going to be in town, like, you're giving away, some shit could go down the final segment. Which you could have made the announcement, like, on Collision and be like, in response!
But they don't have to do this. They have other guys that they could do this with.
Yeah, but he's still considered an EVP.
I understand that, but this is stupid. It just is.
I know it is.
But yeah, so that was the segment. So the background to this is you and I were hanging out this day.
Yes.
And we were talking about what we were going to watch after dinner. Because we had all gone out to dinner.
Let's watch Dynamite.
Yeah, and the joke was, let's watch Dynamite. And I said, why? Who's watching that? And ironically enough, I didn't get back until after Dynamite was over. So I'm reading all of this after I got back to where I was staying this week, just like, are you serious right now? And I have to say, as I'm like just shaking my head right now, I still don't think I would have watched.
Probably not.
I would have watched that 5-minute period and I would have not realized, like, hey, I would have been sitting through this entire show for the one segment that I would have actually enjoyed. And it's not because I find it anything but funny. So my biggest issue that I take with AEW at times, and again, like you heard me, I said I did my good deed for the day, guys. I said good things about AEW today. But
yes.
But now I'm about to shit on them again. This was stupid. This was unnecessary. This is at a time where, as Dan said, he should be focusing on the NFL draft because he is part of the NFL ownership or NFL, executive pool, I'll say, for the Jaguars. And at that point, just let somebody else book your shit. Or send in the booking and just fuck off until Friday night. Because this didn't do anything. And that was my biggest problem with it when I talked to you about it too, Dan. I said, this does nothing. Doesn't help Jack Perry. Doesn't help the Bucks. Doesn't help Okada. Sure as fuck doesn't help Tony Khan. Sure as fuck doesn't help Shadid Khan. in his 5 seconds on TV to show a surprised reaction. It didn't do anything. So is he now going to be like the anti Vince McMahon in the whole like Attitude Era, where he's the fun boss, but everybody else is the asshole? Is Okada now Steve Austin? Or is he HBK and their DX? Or are they Evolution, as I was told earlier? Like, what was the point to this? Doing this now at the end of a show makes no sense. If they did it mid-show or even early show and then explained it at the end of the show, instead of having to wait X days or weeks for this to be explained, it just feels like lazy booking.
It's just completely. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't help you. I think if anything, it pisses off 2 of your fan bases. It pisses off the Jaguars fans because they're whichever fucking 15 of them they have. They have to be pissed off because it's like it's a fucking weekend of the draft and you're doing this fucking shit. And
well, he needs an explanation to be in the Jaguars facility for a week, I guess.
Even the WWE, I don't even think the AEW fans fucking enjoyed themselves last night with that segment. Like
all 50 that could actually get tickets because it was in like, what's that name of that place? Davis or something Center or whatever.
Daly's Place.
Daly's,
it's actually
I knew it was
it's actually it was adjacent to the stadium in Jacksonville.
Oh, I caught that. Don't worry.
Yeah. Which they also had to get seat fillers for the show.
Shocking.
Yeah, because they couldn't. It's their home base technically. Like that's where they had all those. That's where they had all their pandemic shows for years. Yep. Like for a year, they had all of them were at Daly's Place every week, and yeah, they couldn't even sell it out. Like they couldn't even get. I think the last time they were there, they did like 3,000. I don't think this time they could have got like 2,500, which people could sit there. Well, that's not big of a difference. Well, it kind of is when you're just losing by the week your numbers, in attendance and in your overall audience for ratings.
I will be interested to see if this might help them with ratings or not. Because that's the one thing we didn't really touch on. It doesn't help any of the talent, we feel like. It doesn't help them as a company. It definitely doesn't help the Jaguar fans or whatever FC in the UK that they own. It doesn't help them either. But, will it help the ratings? And that's the question. Because maybe this does lead to a storyline that draws views. We don't know yet. Because it's still very, very early. But if it achieves at least that, then it's successful. Which is just really awkward for me to say that out loud, by the way.
I think the ratings, and I've noticed the rating trends, and I've seen it with the Bucks.
Of course.
And they've fallen off the cliff sometimes when the Bucks are on. And
because they want them to be faces. They don't really want the Bucks to be heels.
No, I think there's a lot of people that still blame them for the Punk situation.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of people, they're definitely going to, like with the Jack Perry thing, which they're like, well, his shirt sold out. Okay.
And?
What
did that do for the ratings? Nothing.
Nothing. It didn't do anything last night. Nobody tuned in because they wanted to see fucking Jack Perry. Nobody wanted to see Jack Perry to begin with when he was a babyface with Luchasaurus.
Oh, hey. Kill switch, my brother.
Boy is dinosaur.
It's kill switch now, though, isn't it?
Yeah. It's kill switch, whatever. But nobody gave a shit. Nobody still doesn't care. But they're going to make everybody sound like it does. Like, Jack Perry. Oh, Jesus. No, hey, look, I could be wrong. And this brings them back and brings them some sort of a little pop in the numbers for a little bit. I just don't see it. because I think it's just it's not like that. Tony Khan is kind of like a he's not a respected figure by most wrestling fans right now. Like them hitting that tombstone on Tony Khan, it's like there's a portion of the public that would just there's a portion of wrestling fans that either rejoice to it, that are upset of it. Because I don't think there's many people that are upset about it, because he's kind of nobody really. He's kind of a clown. Like he's been a clown show for like fucking months.
I have to just cut in. I'm sorry, but that's why I reused that graphic.
I know exactly,
because it makes sense. Because first of all, he booked it number one, and number two, you're absolutely right. People do view him as a kind of a clown.
He's a clown. They don't like him taking that tombstone. It's like, okay, like we know what you're trying to do. I mean, look. You're already going to have a massive. You already have a massive problem right now, and you don't even know it. You're going to know it at Double or Nothing. You're going to know it real hard, and I think that the talent that's going to be involved is also not going to be able to deal with it, because let me tell you this, and this is a bold lock prediction, folks. At Double or Nothing, Mercedes Moné is going to get booed out of the fucking building. Bank on it. They are going to turn on her ass big time. And it's because of the fact that she still has not performed a single match. She's already challenging for a championship match in her first match in a year that she hasn't had in about a year. But also, her promos have been terrible. Her commentaries have been terrible. The only thing she's doing is that stupid fucking dance. And she's wearing an earpiece now. She's having lines fed to her. You're paying her how much? And she's having lines fed to her? She had to have a writer hired? And everybody talked about CM Punk being a diva. And you got Mercedes Moné, who has to have an earpiece. She has to have a writer. She has to have this. She has to have that. She has to be the highest paid woman in wrestling. But she can't cut a promo on her own. And the fans are already starting to turn on her anyways. She's not the ratings draw that she was. So that's backfiring. The only thing you have going for you is Will Ospreay. That's your big signing right now. Okada's tied in with the Bucks, which that's a safe spot, but the Bucks have also been dealing with kind of go-away heat for the last 4 or 5 months. So Ospreay's it. And you think this angle is going to work for you. It's not, because you're not a sympathetic figure. You're not someone that's sitting there and people are like, oh, I can't believe they did that to him. It's like, fuck him.
I have to be honest that I probably rewatched it about 10 times at this point.
Of course.
First of all, because he's a clown. And it's just really funny to me. However, the additional, 3 times I'll say, the additional 3 times was gauging the reaction of the fans. And honestly, it's tough to say whether they liked it or hated it, because I would almost make the argument that it was 60% cheering and 40% booing.
Right.
It was not,
which is the wrong reaction.
No, it's the absolute wrong reaction, because if you're trying to portray him, or he's trying to portray himself, whatever you want to call it, as this like sympathetic character, and meanwhile you said it yourself, you brought it up, he said that he always said he's not going to put himself on camera. He's not going to interject himself into the storylines. Which, I don't include some of it in the past, like with MJF and Adam Cole. I don't really count that.
No, I don't
like a
count that
5-second
either.
thing, you know. He was like,
That
yeah,
was
whatever.
I was fine with that.
Yeah, I thought he looked stupid with fucking putting the sunglasses back on inside, but you know, whatever. Each their own.
That didn't even hate me either. That didn't even bother me either.
No, but I'm just throwing it out there.
I understand.
But regardless, you know, like I said, you agreed to it just now. Like I don't really count that. So now he's eating moves. You know, even I forget who it was, but he like gave somebody a beer and then he gave him the stunner. I didn't even care about that much. Like whatever. I don't give a fuck. But this was just like, what are you doing? And maybe it's his way of saying like, hey, I'm gonna fuck off for a while. I don't know. And if that's the case, I'm not gonna complain. But I almost feel like we're getting at like a Tony on the pole match. The match for Tony's soul. Like, just something stupid is going to come out of this. That it's just going to be like, okay, you built this up, and this is what we're getting out of it? And it just goes right back to that conversation we had before about whether or not this is something where they fall into the same stuff that they've been doing. And this is why I segued into it for this part of the conversation, because I just feel like they're going to. We'll have to see what they end up doing with this, if it's anything, because it is something that could be a big story for them. It's just, I don't think they're going to be able to have it be one. And that's
Here's
unfortunate.
The problem.
Go ahead.
Who do you have to avenge Tony Khan?
I mean, listen, I could throw out some names, but...
Like, who do you have?
I mean, listen, you had Adam Copeland go out there 2 weeks ago saying how much he loves the place. You could do that.
To me, that's ineffective, only because of the fact it should be somebody that's, like, long tenured.
I won't disagree with that. Sure.
It shouldn't be someone that I think that, like... Because Adam Copeland defending Tony Khan doesn't make any fucking sense.
Well, neither did him coming out and, you know...
No, I know that.
Doing
that. Trust me, even that I was arguing. I'm like, why he shouldn't be out there defending them?
Right.
He's been there let for a fucking cup of coffee compared to the other guys.
When is MJF due back? That could be another one.
That's a good question. Of course, that's still a question if he's even coming back to them or not.
Listen, that's fair, but say he is. When is he back from injury? Because if it's around this time, have him and a tag team, whether it's FTR or somebody else, do that. And they can facilitate that and add a fourth guy in the sense of having a 4-on-4, you know, and then add a stipulation, because let's be real, Tony on a pole isn't exactly my cup of tea, so maybe have something else. I don't know. But that's what I would do. I would have it be 4-on-4, because it was 4 guys that attacked him. So whether you add MJF and just FTR, because they've been feuding with the Bucks anyways, and then you did one more. So I don't know, throw in Orange Cassidy for all I care.
Probably be fucking Hangman or something.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Like it's probably going to be Hangman.
It probably
at
will.
That point, no one's going to give a shit.
Yeah,
because no one gives a shit about Hangman. Like, and again, I'm like, well, look, I go to Walmart. Okay, I go to Walmart every so often. I go in the action figure aisle. You know who I see all the fucking time? Just hanging there, taking up fucking space.
Could it be
for years?
Hangman.
It was the Hangman page, like that peg warmer page thing that CM Punk talked about. I'm like,
oh yeah,
he's 100% right. Every time I go there, it's the Hangman where he's dressed up in like the shirt, the jeans, and he's got the belt. I've seen that figure just sitting there for fucking 2 years now, and it's not just one figure. There's like half a dozen to like 10, just sitting there. Just been collecting dust for 2 years. Not just him. It's also Eddie Kingston, and I think one of the new Jericho ones, too. They're just up there all the time. 3 guys that just no one gives a shit about right now in that company. And Like, I get it. I'm not trying to, like, because I always feel apologetic because I don't want people to think I'm fucking biased. And I don't want anybody thinking I'm an e-drone either, considering I'm wearing a fucking world-class championship wrestling t-shirt. Like, so it's obvious that I'm not some fucking e-drone mark that all he knows is WWE. I'm just trying to tell you. Trying to be honest with you and give you my honest fucking opinion. And am I biased? Of course I am, because it's my own fucking opinion. That's a bias. Like, that, whenever somebody calls someone being biased, it's like, well, yeah, because it's my opinion.
I mean,
Fact is, and I'm just giving you the facts.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's a fact, but number two, we spoke very highly of their pay-per-view, so
Yes,
it's not like
very
we
highly.
didn't watch or anything. I admitted I didn't watch the whole thing. I caught the clips. I read about it, but you know, I also am not going to justify spending, you know, $40 to $70 a month on their pay-per-views. I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, my it just doesn't work for me, brother. Like, it just throws the economics of it. I'm sorry. Look, the minute that WWE came up with the network, and we were paying $10 a month, I was like, fuck that.
With the pay-per-view.
It's like I can't go back to any other model. And then AEW comes in, and I said, you know, it's like, I understand why, because it's like they're a startup. All right, give them money every so often. All right. And then it was quarterly, right? It was every 3 or 4 months. It was like, all right. Now it's bi-monthly. Then now it's monthly. Sorry, can't do it. Just, I won't, you know, it's like, I'd rather spend money on stuff that, like, is actually, it's liquid. It's there. You know, it's not like it's, this whole bullshit of, oh, well, I could just go back and watch it. I'm probably not going to go watch the pay-per-view again. Maybe a match or two, but that's it.
That's the thing, yeah. And even as good as this pay-per-view was, I'm probably going to watch, like, half the matches, if that.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. And, sorry. As soon as the model came in for WWE, it's like, look, the days of paying fucking $50 a pay-per-view are over. It's not happening again.
Yeah.
So.
Right. So the other news this week, before we go into the final segment, though, this will segue into that final segment, is quite a number of releases this week from WWE. So we had quite a few. We had, I think, about 6 or 7, if I'm not mistaken. We got 4 up right now. So one of them, I guess we'll start from one direction to the other, since one is going to segue into a whole other conversation. Yes. So one is Veer Mahan, or Mahan, or however you want to pronounce that. He was part of Indashir, which ended up being a stable with one of the other people on this screen right now. But I was a little surprised by this one, because they didn't really give him a chance. And I guess you could say the same about Cameron Grimes, who's also on the slide. So with Veer Mahan, they brought him right up, put him on Raw, had him feud with the Mysterios for a little bit when Dominic was still kind of a good guy and transitioning into a bad guy. Just had him come out and wreck people, and he was damn good at it. Then they kind of sent him back down to NXT, and he became part of Indashir, like I said. And they called him back up, and he was on TV maybe twice at that point with his partner. And then that was it. You haven't seen him since. You've seen Jinder Mahal more, who is also part of Indashir, as kind of like the manager / third guy, but just kind of a weird release. Yeah, other, as I mentioned, just kind of skip over Zaya for a second, it's Cameron Grimes. Cameron was also called up last year from NXT. He's been on television maybe about 5 times, if that.
Yeah.
Really did not get a chance to get going on the main roster at all. Was very good in NXT. I kind of wish instead of just releasing him, they sent him back. I think that he could have been something good if they built him up more. But the character they kind of saddled him with was this happy-go-lucky, I don't even know, just character in general. Didn't really do anything, didn't really go anywhere, and then that was it. I think he beat Corbin once, and I think that was really the biggest thing that he had kind of done on the main roster, and then after that, that was it. Xia Li, I feel like Xia Li is very much a victim had she stayed, but she went on her own, and that being Lacey Evans, where they kind of just didn't know exactly what to do with the character, kept repackaging her, made her into this like martial arts expert coming out with the swords and the staff and shit, almost kind of like fucking Jade from Mortal Kombat sometimes. And just that was it. And then she had a couple feuds with Becky. I think she had one with Candice and Indy a little bit too for the kicks in the head. Becky obviously being the more notable one for the NXT Championship at one point. Feuded, I believe, with Lyra Valkyria because of that feud with Becky as well. And it seemed like you might see her more, and then they just kind of like dropped it. I think those are the more notable ones for me. I know there were a couple more, but I don't even remember them. They're mostly NXT people, I believe.
I think, Von Wagner, I think.
Von Wagner was another one, yep.
That was a kind of a surprise one because there were a lot of people that were like, that guy's going to be something. Yeah. And I'm like, I mean, none of them were really surprising except Cameron Grimes.
I think Xia too, for me.
Xia, yeah, a little
because
bit.
Because they really built her up in the beginning of last year to be like,
they did. That. I mean, they really did too. I mean, that was... Plus, he was. I think she was in the Triple H camp, so it was.
She was.
That was a bit of a surprise, but you know, I that's just some of the business sometimes where it's just like every so often you kind of get like, wow, that was a bit of a surprise. I mean, I'm not surprised by a lot of these releases, but at the same time, I am by a couple of them at least. And Cameron Grimes and Xia Li are definitely in that category of like, I don't know if I would have done that. But everybody else, I was just like, man, I mean, the Veer Mahan thing, I don't know what they were thinking with that. Like, I don't
think he was ready the first time.
Probably not.
That's what I'll say. Where he's feuding with Ray and Dominic, I don't think he was really ready. And listen, like that's not really on him.
Yeah.
And I believe that was more Vince too at that time than it was Hunter. Having said that, though, I thought putting him back in NXT was a good idea because you either could do what they did and team him up with somebody, or you can turn around and really build him up more and give him more of a character definition than what they gave him, which was really just the angry Indian dude who's destroying people, which wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. So I didn't hate it that they got rid of him because it was like really doing much at that point anyways. You called him to cheer up, you didn't do shit with him. Fine. Cameron Grimes, they had called him up for like a year and they barely showed him.
Right.
But given his work in NXT, I feel like they owed him a little bit better. The character really had no defining characteristics on the main roster, whereas in NXT, dude's a former like mid-card champion. Like, what are you doing? With Xia Li, they really tried to build her up on the main roster.
Right.
They tried to even build her up in NXT to a point where, like I said, she's trying to go after Becky for the NXT title when she had it, which also drew her in to a feud with Lyra Valkyria for a little bit. So I was really surprised by that one, just by how much they had really tried to build her up. It was not for lack of trying, in my opinion, at all. But then I know we have others, but those are the main four that I think really surprised me the most, obviously, and that's why I included them on the slide. Von Wagner is another one that surprised me because of his age, number one, and number two, the fact that a lot of people saw him as that future.
Yeah. I just thought he was somebody, I'm like, oh, yeah, he's got the look. I don't know if he's got everything else. And it's obviously he doesn't. Like, they,
yeah.
If
If he had it, I feel like they would have called him up already. That's the
exactly thing. That's the thing. It's they have too many people right now that they're the complete package. That if you don't have an aspect or you're lacking, especially your character, if you're lacking some things on character, they're just like, well, we don't have time. And I feel like that's kind of their direction, and I'm not surprised by really any of it.
Even the former world champion.
Well, let me just put it to people like this.
Oh boy.
Jinder Mahal should have never even been brought back when they rehired him a few years back after his initial release. It was around 2014, 2015, around that time. He never should have been brought back. Never. He was never really that good to begin with. Yeah, he had a good look, but there were 15 other guys I would have put ahead in that spot. Maybe even a hell of a lot more, actually, than 15. There are a lot of moments that I can look back on with Vince, and I can say, all right, that was questionable. All right, that was questionable. The moment that Jinder Mahal became WWE champion, I was like, that's it. It's over. He needs to get the fuck out of the chair. Like, he needs to just hand over the reins to somebody else because he's completely lost it. He had absolutely no fucking business holding that championship at all. At all. It was a disgrace. The guy is a fucking joke. And I don't care how good of a character he was. I don't care how good of a talker he was. I don't care what type of heat or what type of stuff he drew. He wasn't good at any of it. The guy had the same match finish for every single championship match that he had. It was the same thing. How he won the title against Randy Orton. How he beat fucking... I wanted to punch a hole in my wall the fucking time that he beat Shinsuke at SummerSlam 2017.
Yeah.
I was so pissed off. Because Shinsuke was white hot. He beat fucking John Cena and we became number one contender. He beat Cena clean. Big fucking deal that was. And it's just like, here we go, coronation. Oh, this fucking asshole. That's how it was. All it did was bring frustration. When AJ Styles won the title in fucking London, which you got Brock Lesnar to thank for that, because Lesnar, they were like, oh, it's gonna be you and Jinder at fucking at Survivor Series, and Brock looked at them and said, no. He's like, give it to AJ. I'll face AJ at first Survivor Series. Done. And the fucking match was a masterpiece. AJ was champion for over a year. So that's maybe the only good thing that came out of this whole fucking thing, was the fact that AJ Styles got over a year championship reign with the WWE title, and he fought Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series.
Yeah.
Check, 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 check.
Oh, man. I think it's probably good to segue now. So we're going to do another Wall of Shame tonight, which I think is just apropos given this conversation, number one, of Jinder Mahal, but number two, I only put Wall of Shame. I never say what it is until we get to the segment. So tonight, Obviously, as I said earlier, Dan and I saw each other yesterday, and the conversation quickly drifted to, so what the fuck are we going to talk about tomorrow?
Yeah.
Because there's so much news that we had to get through to get to this point that I was like, oh, fuck, good question. Do we even need another segment? So we decided that we were talking about Jinder Mahal. Let's talk about, and this was Dan's idea, bad WWE champions. This is our wall of shame of champions. Or our champion wall of shame. Whatever you want to call it. Because it's... So, obviously, the first one we kind of already went through. Jinder Mahal. We can do this in any order. And there's a couple people that we can talk about after some of these. Or while we talk about some of these. Because... I know Dan wanted to include somebody, but when I got to actually putting this together, I was like, I kind of out of room. And I kind of wanted them to all be a similar size, so I was like, man, if I resize anybody right now, it's going to look like shit.
You were concerned, too. You're like, I don't want to get too much backlash for this.
As time went on, and I grabbed it, I did grab his silhouette and everything, and it was ready to go. I was just like, you know what? I have nowhere to fucking put him. And you're right about the backlash, but I don't think you're wrong.
No.
So let's open with that after we've already talked about Jinder. I don't think we need to say anything more about Jinder because my god. But yeah, we've talked about Jinder. Dan, go ahead. Your mystery guest on the wall of shame.
I was going to put the Ultimate Warrior.
Oh shit! I did silhouette him too, but for whatever reason, same thing.
He was the first real biggie. Then there was, but I guess I'll
go with the one we actually think is the one that's gonna get the shit for. Because I don't think
Bob Backlund. Yeah. I was going to. Bob Backlund was a terrible WWE champion.
I'm gonna say this. I'm not gonna sing it like I did earlier because it's way more than that. He is the longest transitional champion.
Oh god.
In WWE history. Because let's be real, there was no Bob Backlund era.
No.
It was
still Bruno.
When the fuck did we get to the next era?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm calling him a transitional champion, because let's be real, like, he was a go-to. Just like a lot of guys, you know, like let's be real, like, you could make the argument that Roman, even to a certain degree, is a transitional champion, but he also owned his era, right?
Yes.
And that's the thing that separates him from Bob Backlund. It was Roman's era. He's not a transitional champion. He is the era. Bob Backlund was not that. He was a transitional champion at a time where they were desperate for the next big thing.
Backlund defeated Graham. Number one, he never should have beat Graham.
No shit.
That was a terrible. Because Vince McMahon Sr., this was Sr. making that call. If Junior had his decision, Graham would have never lost the title when he did to Backlund. And I also think if Junior did have any say, Backlund probably wouldn't have been world champion at all.
Yeah. 100%.
Graham was hot as hell. He was fucking white hot. And it was starting to turn. Because he was a heel. It was starting to turn that he was going to become a babyface. And instead of pivoting, he went with Backlund's the guy. And it fucked up Graham to the point of his career never recovered. And
I don't think he tried to recover it either. That was the other thing.
Senior,
not Billy Graham himself, but Senior. Senior didn't get
No, he didn't. It just it didn't make any sense. It just didn't. It's one of the most baffling booking decisions in the history of the industry. Why didn't you stick with Graham? He only got 9 months. Like, why didn't you? But that was the thought process. Well, babyface territory. But he's over. He's you can still make him a babyface. It's just you have to go through the transition. The most money that they made when Bob Backlund was world champion was when Zbyszko and San Martino were on top.
Yeah.
And nothing to do with Bob.
No, at all.
At all.
It really didn't.
It didn't. Bob, he was there. He was a placeholder. He was holding the championship. Now, don't get me wrong. He is a fantastic in-ring performer. He's one of the most technically sound performers in the history of the industry. But his personality was the shits, and he couldn't cut a fucking promo.
He couldn't cut shit. Yeah. He really couldn't. And
I'll give him credit in his 94 run. But in 80, between 78 and 83, no.
But the 90s run, I don't even really include that if you think about it. Cause, he was way past. Way past.
Way past.
But the thing is, and this is why I ultimately ended up agreeing with you, even though I didn't include him in the slide, it's like, he was dog shit on the mic, number one.
It was the worst.
But even in saying that, the more I looked back and the more I thought about it, my statement stands. He is the longest transitional champion in company history.
Yes.
In the industry. Nobody gave a shit. People wanted to see Zbyszko. People wanted to see San Martino. They didn't want to fucking come see him.
No.
And he was your fucking world champion. And it's not to take anything away from his in-ring ability. Listen, for his time period and what we're looking at the sample size even, he's phenomenal in the ring.
Oh, fantastic.
But as your overall champion, no. They were bigger guys at that time, and I don't mean size-wise, I mean just period. Bigger guys like Zbyszko, like San Martino, that really could have held the company up and probably in a better light than Bob Backlund. And again, it's not to talk shit about Backlund. That's not what we're doing. We're just saying, as a world champion, that's not the direction they should have gone.
In 82, they did a July 4th and the Omni. It was Flair and Backlund. It was WWF champion versus the NWA champion. And they did some promo work in Georgia Championship Wrestling. I think Gordon Solie was the announcer. And you just see Backlund, trying to cut a promo against Flair. And it's like a child up against a...
Oh, my God, it was so awkward. Yeah.
It was literally Kramer and Seinfeld in the karate class. He doesn't stand a chance. He's not even in the same fucking league. It's just, it was ridiculous. And just seeing Backlund have to be able to talk with God's gift to wrestling at that point, it wasn't even close. It was impossible. And yeah, I mean, I understand why people have the kind of rose-colored glasses, and because I'm sure there's an audience right now, because you think about it, when we were born, he was technically the champion of the WWF. When I was born, Backlund was champion.
Wasn't it Sheik?
No.
Or was that right after
December,
we were born?
December of 83 one.
Okay.
One the day after Christmas in 83.
Yep, you're right.
So we were both.
Would have been Backlund.
So Backlund was champion when we were both born, which is, that's a pretty cool statistic. But at the same time, I'm glad he wasn't champion when I wanted to get into it, because I probably would have been like, this sucks.
Yeah, a little bit.
Instead, we were able to get, when colorization was done, we were there after. We were able to watch it. Our wrestling experience was the second half of The Wizard of Oz, when everything was in color.
Oh man, yeah.
But those were it's just, he was a compiler. That's pretty much all he was. He was just somebody that was there along for the ride. Yeah, he's put up great, fantastic numbers, but yeah, I don't think it's really anything to kind of write home about. The company was not in the best financial situation. There were guys better on the list that they could have put in that spot, but for Christ's sake, it was just like Backlund again. Oh, great. Oh,
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. It's like you look back, and you mentioned it too before. Like you look at the history of the company, you look at guys that have become. I think the best way to say it is immortalized.
yes.
He is one of them, and he's like that for a lot of people that have that wrestling history, wrestling acumen to look at those time periods, whether it be around the time they were born or obviously well after, considering our age and our viewership. But he is one of them. He's a Hall of Famer, and people sometimes look at that also as rosy and through rose-colored glasses, however you want to say it, and it's the truth. But he wasn't that good.
No.
He was. You
No.
look at guys, and just to name one, he's obviously not on the slide as a bad champion, but Steve Austin. Steve had everything. Steve had the look. Steve had the athleticism. Steve had the mic skills. Steve had a character that you could get behind. And yes, you're looking at a time period of 20, like, we'll say like 15 to 20 plus years after a time period like Backlund's. It's very different. The world is different. The industry is different. Sex sells a lot of things at that point. But even in saying that, it's still, despite the differences in time period, it still comes down to that athleticism, which Bob Backlund did have, but he just did not have the mic skills. He did not have the natural charisma that a guy like The Rock or Steve Austin had. He didn't have the gimmick that a guy like The Undertaker had. And it's not a knock on him. It's just looking at it from different views. So I have to agree about Backlund, which cracks me up. When we first talked about this, I was like, really? But when you go back and you look at it, yeah. He was not a great champion.
They could have come out with Howdy Doody merch. And
that is true.
It's just, that was his gimmick. He was the all-American boy. And it's just like, what the fuck what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck are you doing bringing this guy? Because you got Graham, who's this fucking amazing talent. This guy is talking people into the building. Like, everybody on the fucking planet Earth wants to see him as world champion. You want to see... Why are you going to stop this hot run and put this fucking guy in there? Nobody wants to see this.
It's so funny because you're so right. That's the funny part to me. It's like you're so right in the fact that you had, and I said it, you had guys like Zbyszko, you had guys like San Martino, and you had other guys that were coming up that you just look and you're like, why?
After Zbyszko turned heel on San Martino, he was so hot you could have had him beat Backlund easily. Taking the belt off Backlund, and then you have a white hot heel, and then you just have to have a believable baby face that could come in and kick his ass and all that stuff. I mean, they could have brought Hogan in earlier. I don't know. But no, they didn't do that. They went with the route of, we're going to stick with Ben. For what? For what?
Yeah, I don't know what the point would have been.
I think that was also probably when Vince probably made the decision. I'm buying the old man out. Like, this has got to go. This has got to stop. And then, lo and behold, he'd do the same bullshit like 30 years later. Jinder Mahal, really? You fuck?
Oh man, yeah. Yeah. So moving ahead a little bit, I don't even know where to start. I guess we could start in '98, And the one-day championship of the guy who I thought this was the best picture of him with the championship, ironically enough.
The one I think you can find.
No, there's a few, but I thought this one was probably the best one in terms of like a full body picture in some cases, but also given the context of how important Paul Bearer played to that storyline, I thought it was only fitting to include him. But that was I think it was less than 24 hour reign of the Big Red Machine, Kane. So I want to clarify this, and I had to go back and actually talk with Dan a bit about this one. We're not including the World Heavyweight Championship reign.
No, we're not. No.
Not including the ECW Championship reign.
No.
We're only including the 1998 WWE Championship, or WWF Championship at the time, reign of Kane. So this was, as I said, I think a little bit less than 24 hours. He won it. And what was the stipulation again?
It was the first blood match.
First blood, okay. So if Kane bled...
If he bled, not only was if he bled, he was going to set himself on fire.
Yep.
And I believe I said to you in the text, I said, I wish he just set himself on fire instead of being champion.
You did, and that's why I had to look up the actual stipulation, because I totally forgot. It cracks me up. I have to say it, because when you think about it, you're like, it's one of those stipulations, right? And I apparently just said the outro. My bad. I just leaned on it, I guess. So ironically enough, yeah. So with the stipulations, we just had one this year where it was, bloodline rules, and if Cody doesn't win, he can't be champion, or he can't, challenge for it again. So that's very similar to this. And you're like, oh, okay, Kane's going to win. Only to fucking drop it the next night on Monday Night Raw to fucking Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Dumb.
I have to play your reaction here for this.
I mean, what the fuck is that? Like, what is that? Yeah.
It's just...
Exactly.
Why?
I remember being pissed off as a kid, and then Taker...
Oh, I was furious.
Like, Taker came out and, hit him with the chair. I'm like, what the fuck is this shit?
Yep.
Plus, Kane was smart in how he had the garb. Did he have the arm exposed, or was it, like, just the hand that was exposed? Because I remember he had that kind of gimmick going in from Unforgiven, that Inferno match. So that way he was pretty much completely covered. So I remember he got walloped with the...
At the No. You asked, I'll just answer it. So at the pay-per-view, he was full garb. At Raw the next night, he had one arm exposed.
Okay. I'm assuming with the full garb, he was having it, so that way it would be less... Like, that was a matchup where it was hard for a first blood match against him, because his whole body, it's covered everywhere except the head.
Yeah.
Like, but the head, he's wearing a mask, and it's full thing, so... Austin had to lose. You just didn't know how. I always thought they were just going to drop the blood from the ceiling, and then the referee was going to get kind of just like, oh, what the fuck?
Right.
But they went with the route of Taker comes down, hits Austin with the chair, and the ricochet, he gets hit, and then referee sees it, calls for the bell. Yeah, but he then now has an out the next night, so that way he can be like, I want to challenge for the title because I didn't technically lose.
Yeah.
And, and that's why they did it the next night.
Yep. They built him up so much from, the year previously, 97 and 98, and then going forward, obviously, they changed the character so significantly that it was almost like a bastardization of itself. But 98 would have been his year, and then they're like, okay, we'll put the belt on you. Mm-hmm. And then tomorrow you're just going to drop to Steve Austin. Like, come on. And listen, Austin was hot. He was hot, man. Like, everybody knew it. Everybody knew it. People are, at school at that time period in 1998, people are either doing the middle fingers or the chop blocks. Like, let's be real. And then, here comes big character that is just such a force, really, that is like the anti-Undertaker in some cases, and is a monster heel, and people kind of dig that at some points, too. We've seen it. But then they just, no, you should drop it to Steve Austin tomorrow. Like, what?
Yeah.
It's just, oh, man. Ironically enough, another person that was champion around that same time was Mr. Redacted McMahon.
Redacted.
Yep. That's also why I put it right in his brain, by the way, for the tack. I was tempted whether or not I should cover his whole face with it, but I decided against it. It was a strategic placing. So for those that don't remember it, this was when Vince McMahon became world champion. It was really to further that feud with Steve Austin.
No, it was Triple H.
Was it Triple H then?
Yep.
I thought it was Austin.
No.
What am I fucking thinking of then?
Him and Austin had kind of worked out their differences, and he was involved with this feud with Triple H.
I remember that, yeah.
So he ended up. So Austin came down and actually helped Vince cover Triple H to win the title. I think Vince had just come back from, because he technically had to leave 2 months earlier because of that end of an era first blood match with him and Taker.
Right.
And then Vince is back within 6 weeks and he wins the title. It's like, oh, that fucking makes sense.
Yeah, I forgot
Russo
it was
was
Triple
booking
H.
around this
That's
standpoint
funny.
too, folks. So that should tell you something. But yeah,
ironically, it does. That's God.
But this is. I remember this being just like, oh, this is bad. Like, this is really bad. Like, this is terrible.
It's funny when I was putting this all together and stuff. The one that popped in my head, I didn't do it because it was World Heavyweight Championship, and then are we going to include like the WCW lineages and stuff? And I was just like, you know what? I'm just not going to put David Arquette on the slide at all.
No, I could have. We could do WCW at some point, but not.
Oh my God, no!
We'll
please.
just stick with. Yeah, we could just talk about the year 2000 for 4 hours.
Oh my God! Yeah, seriously. But yeah, this was bad. Even if it wasn't Austin and it was furthering a feud with Triple H, it was still bad.
Yeah.
I don't know what is worse, him as WWE champion or him as ECW champion. They both were so just awful. Yeah, I would argue the ECW one was way worse, but yeah. He came up with the do-rag all the time.
That had its moments.
It did. Don't get me wrong.
It did have its moments.
There were other times where it's like, what are you doing, old man? Just what are you doing?
Yeah, and this also opened the door for other guys to, like, as Russo won the WCW championship like a year later. This opened the door for.
Well, he wrote this, so it
owners.
makes sense.
Yeah, exactly right.
So the other guy I put on the slide, just as my own decision, was Alberto Del Rio.
Alberto Del Rio.
I never understood what they saw in this guy.
Fucking sucked.
I just never understood what they saw in this guy.
I still remember when he won that 40-man Royal Rumble. I was like, this guy? This guy.
Wasn't it him and Santino that year?
Yeah.
Dude.
Santino, they almost, it would have been better if Santino had won it because
Absolutely.
the fans were 100% behind Santino, even though, Santino being
like
winning the Rumble, people would have been like, there would have been a good audience of like, what the fuck just happened? But it would have been better than the alternative because Alberto Del Rio is just, he's another guy that I was like, why the fuck do they see this? What do they see in this guy? Like, what the fuck do they see in this guy?
I wish I knew because honestly, like, I really wasn't watching back then. I remember watching that Rumble though, because 40-man Rumble. How often do you?
It was
see
in
that?
Boston too.
That's true too.
Yeah.
And I just Santino's character was just fucking awesome.
Yeah.
It just was, and it's very much like some of the other wrestlers that have certain moves that you love to watch people sell. There's always the conversation about who sold a Stunner well. There's always the conversation about who sold the Cobra well. And I will never forget that neurotoxin sell because it was fucking hilarious. But it's just, he was not a serious wrestler. He was more like a gimmick, comedic wrestler. Like R-Truth now, right? Not R-Truth throughout his career, but R-Truth now is more comedic. Very much in tune with Santino back then. Santino was not meant to be serious. He was meant to be funny. But he still won mid-card championships. And nobody hated it. And then he's in this Rumble, and there's so many points where you're like, they're going to fucking do it. Mm-hmm. Holy shit, they're going to fucking do it. And it would have been fucking hilarious to see him in the main event at WrestleMania. Would have been even funnier to see him as world champion.
I know.
Let's be real. He would have been a transitional champion as well. But it would have been fucking funny as hell. And I just never understood what they saw in Alberto Del Rio. I still to this day don't.
They were always looking for the Rey Mysterio replacement. And they thought Del Rio was that guy, and it was like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
I know you're trying, but it's not. I think they saw somebody that he's got kind of got like an Eddie Guerrero kind of like background. It's like, no, I wouldn't even put him in the same category.
No,
his dad was a legendary wrestler. I forget his name. I think
I forget too. Yeah.
Yeah, but his dad was a legendary performer in Mexico.
Right.
They thought with the lineage, all that stuff that he was going to bring, and he brought nothing to the table. He brought nothing except headaches. What he did to Paige Saraya, highly questionable.
Scumbag.
Like, he's just not a good guy, not a good human being. And just a weak champion on top of it. Like but more importantly, he's just not a good guy, not a good human being. I'm glad that I've been seeing the footage of him in front of like high schools, in front of like 25 people wrestling.
Yeah. That's where you belong,
that's
bitch.
where you belong, motherfucker.
Yep.
Sorry. It's just, you could have, and whatever. He fucked himself. But I'm glad at the same time too, because it's just, he wasn't that good to begin with.
No.
Like, he just wasn't.
And that's the thing. Like, when we started talking about this, I always refer back to you. I ask you suggestions of who in some cases should we put on the slides, right? Especially for ones like these. Like give me some fresh ideas. Like obviously Jinder, since he got released, we were going to talk about him anyways. And then I don't even think I really asked you at some points. I think I asked your input, but then I just kind of remembered going to Wikipedia and Google and stuff and just Googling the list of champions, previous champions. And the Kane one, I was, and then I saw his WWE Championship reign, and I was like, oh my god, that was fucking bad.
Yeah.
And the Vince McMahon one, I had completely away from my memory because it was just so bad. But then I was starting to remember more and more. I remember the Big Show, Sheamus, other guys. I'm not saying those guys are bad. I'm just saying I remember them. But then I landed on Alberto Del Rio, and I was like, oh my god. How can I have a list of bad champions without this ass clown? Just how?
I thought about Psycho Sid, too, and then I was like...
Is that his fault, though?
No. But Psycho Sid also has an interesting statistic. He's the only wrestler ever to beat Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart in back-to-back months at a pay-per-view.
That's true.
And I was just like, all right, that's a strong enough accolade to not kind of put him there.
Yeah,
And
I just don't see it as his fault.
I have a soft spot for Sid. I don't know
Same.
why. Like, I just, like, because it's obvious he's not like everybody else where it's like, he couldn't do much in the ring. He didn't fucking have to.
He didn't have to.
He was an intense promo. When he was screaming at a camera, you were fucking terrified.
So,
yeah, he had cool moves. And on top of that, like, if he wanted to do squash matches where you just have him go out there for like 90 seconds and just have him kill some like 120-pound local guy, I would have had him do that like every week. I would have just been like, here, just go out and kill him. I don't care what you do.
I don't know why, though. For me, I always like Sid better in WCW than I did in WWE.
No, that's a good point. No, you're right. That is a good point.
I just think he was better. Sid Vicious, I thought, was better than Psycho Sid.
The Goldberg stuff with the car.
Oh God, that was fucking hilarious. I love it. Love it. Goldberg! Why? Oh my God. So great.
But yes, in WCW I did prefer him a lot, but I did like his Sid Justice theme was fucking rocked.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
But I have such a soft spot for Sid. Like, so it's like, I'm not going to put him as like the worst. And I actually really like him now on Twitter because his fucking comments are hilarious. Like, so
dude,
I'm like, you know what? Sid's fine. I'm going to put, he's fine.
I just never put the blame on him.
No, I never did either, really.
You know, it's not like these other guys. And like, listen, you can make the argument for Kane too. Like, I feel like Kane would have had some kind of pull to say, "Hey, listen, dude, you're making me a monster. Then you're making me job to Steve Austin the next night. Like, what?" But Vince definitely had a choice. Alberto Del Rio just sucked, and Jinder had no business in the main event.
None.
So those are a little bit different than Sid, who I feel like definitely had business in the main event, but just never really got to a point in WWE that would have facilitated him being there. Which is probably why I like him in WCW so much, because the character had evolved at that point, and he definitely was worthy of it at that point too. He had proved it in WWE. Whether or not he won those matches or was a strong champion in WWE, you can make that argument, but again, I just don't think that's his fault.
No, I agree. I always think there's always a list because there's guys from like Stan State. They always bring up like Stan Stasiak and others too of being like the worst, and it's like it's hard for me to kind of.
That's
put
a good
guys in that
segue.
category.
That's a good segue for a second. So when I was looking for some of the pictures tonight, I came across a video that had like a top 10.
Mm.
And one of them they put was Big E. I was like, I don't think that's Big E's fault, though.
No, it's not. Well, for one thing, it was a dessert. Looking back on it now, I'm glad he got that, only because of what
ended up happening.
Transpired a few months later.
Yeah.
Which he's probably never coming back. I've kind of written that. It's especially that I was like, if he's not back within a year, he's not coming back.
So last I heard, it was the 2-year mark. And last I heard, it was he posted to social media saying that no new bone is forming, which basically means
they're not going to clear me.
He's not fused, like not completely fused at that point,
right?
Because you should be fusing those vertebrae. And yeah, like you said, they're not going to clear him with that case. So at that point, he's probably not coming back. Because at 2 years, you should have had your bones fusing at that point. So with no new bone forming, it's very likely he's done, which sucks. So my argument still stands, is that I feel like WWE, and I feel like he's proven this enough too, just saying that too, that they should give him some kind of an announcing gig, whether that's backstage, whether that's
I agree.
PLE pre-shows. I don't care. Give the guy something. Give him a job. Keep him employed. Because he's he puts in the work and he's worth it. He's shown that he's not bad. When he was doing the pre-show with CM Punk and Pat McAfee and others, he was good. Keep him employed.
It's true.
He wants to be there. But I don't think putting him on that list is really an indication that he was a bad champion. I just think it was just bad booking. I don't put that on him at all. Like, everybody knew he was going to be a transitional champion to a certain degree.
To a certain degree, yeah.
Yeah, not to the point of me singing the song, but he kind of was. But God bless. But can you that was the only one that stood out for me in that video. That's why I brought it up. But do you have any other ones that you can think of that you're just like, it wasn't a good champion?
Warrior's a big one.
We did touch on that. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's just he's the guy who beats Hogan clean. He's the guy, and within 9 months he's done. Like at least even challenging in that position. He did get a rematch. I mean, he didn't get a rematch for another year and a half when he fought Savage at Wembley at SummerSlam '92.
Yep.
And they didn't put the title on him then. They transitioned it over to Flair again. It's very
right call, by the way.
It was the right call, but at the same time, it's like you'd think, because he was such a huge star, and everybody looks at how well they did back then. Everybody looked fondly at the WrestleMania 6 match between him and Hogan, and there was a good portion of people that were fans of the Warrior, and he put up comparable. Like, he had comparable, I think, popularity at certain points. But I don't know. It's just like, I felt like that something was clicking. The arguments have been made that he didn't have a good supporting cast. Like, there wasn't enough villains for him to go through, which that's true, to an extent. But I also think, too, it's just he got exposed a little bit because it was the same thing. It's like, oh, here comes the entrance. It's going a fucking mile a minute.
And now he's gassed.
Shoulder tackle, gassed. And that's like, oh, he comes out. He's gassed. Bell rings. Shoulder tackle. Press slam. Splash. 1, 2, 3. Match over. Okay.
Yeah. It was very cookie cutter. I agree.
Yeah, it's just... And there was a point in time where he wasn't even, like, having singles matches. They were all like tag matches. He was teaming up with the Legion of Doom against Demolition for like a time between like October and November of '90. So he which the funny part is that Savage was ready to be his challenger, and I'm surprised they didn't do that. But they went with the route of, well, we're going to go with Hogan and Slaughter because we'll just do Slaughter as like the Iraqi sympathizer and all that.
So, good segue.
Yes.
I was actually going to go there if you didn't. Do you put Slaughter on that list too?
No.
Or on the Wall of Shame, I should say.
No.
Really?
No.
Okay.
Because I thought he was an effective heel going into that WrestleMania. I just, when you're lighting the poster and the shirt of Hulkamania on fire, there is a element of fear that puts people in, especially if you're 7 or 8 years old, like we were at that time. Like, what Slaughter was doing was terrifying to a young kid. Like, it just was.
I'll give you that, but I also think he was well past being good in the ring too.
He was well past it, but at the same time, it was forgivable. Like at that,
for the storyline, yeah.
For the storyline purposes, I forgive it. For some reason, I just think it's an effective storyline. Like it was an effective storyline.
Well, it
So
was
I
because of the
just
time. Absolutely.
exactly,
We
and
talked
I
about
just
that. Yeah.
so it's like So I've always kind of felt leaving him off that list. I mean, I understand why people put it because there's a lot of people that just they didn't like that angle, and I get it, but I don't know. Like to me, it was I thought it was okay.
Yeah, it's hard to think of any other ones, but because especially in like the 2000s, like you had Cena and Orton that were champion like so many times
Yeah,
that it's like you could make the argument for like some of the reigns maybe, but
yeah.
overall they were good champions.
If we're talking about Reigns, I mean,
Yeah, that's the thing. Like if you get that like nitty gritty and that detailed, you can make the argument for some of those reigns being like bad champions. But overall, like especially those two were such great champions for a good chunk of their reigns that it almost like offsets the bad ones.
Jericho is a bad WWE champion.
Oh, I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it. Ever since you said what you said earlier, I was like, I wonder if he's going to bring up Jericho in that segment. No shit, that was my thought process. That's so funny you said it. Listen, I'm not going to say he was a bad champion, but I will say that he had no business winning that triple threat match.
No, he not beating Rock and Austin the same
No.
night. I'm sorry, he had no business doing that. Would he been a good? Would he been an acceptable world champion at some point? Yeah, I just don't think in late night 2001, early 2002, especially going into that fucking WrestleMania against Triple H, he shouldn't have been in that spot. He shouldn't have just. He shouldn't have been. I'm sorry, and you know, I don't think like Vince McMahon of just like, well, we're putting the belt on Jericho, so that shows you how fucking shitty this business is right now.
Oh my god, I know.
Like I would never say something like that, but I think that's we might have similar thought process on that.
No, we do. You don't say that in front of your talent.
No, you don't.
That's like me telling one of my reps like the other one sucks. Since I'm a supervisor, I have a team of like 10 specialists. So if I sit there and say to one specialist, "Oh, that guy sucks," what's that going to do to him? Number one, and number two, is he then going to turn around and say it to the rest of them, who are then going to be like, "Oh, he plays favorites." Then, like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not
Right.
That's stupid. And he obviously said it for a reason, and I get that, but that was also him. He played stupid games like that, and clearly he won stupid prizes with it too, because Jericho was not champion for very long.
No, he wasn't. I mean,
Go ahead.
he got a bunch of world heavyweight title runs out of that after that. I mean, he never even, I think, sniffed the WWE title again after that.
I don't think he did, yeah. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, beyond that, it's hard to really think of anyone that was really bad other than the ones that we've already mentioned.
Yeah, people mention Kofi too, and I highly disagree on that.
I mean, when people mention him, they also bring up Daniel Bryan too.
Yeah, his reign wasn't exactly great. At least the first one wasn't exactly great either, or the one after WrestleMania 30. Excuse me.
Oh, I knew what you meant. Don't worry.
Yeah. It's just, it's all perception in the end, because I'm sure that there's a good portion of people that just be like, well, I didn't find Hogan to be. Well, you're an idiot, number one. But number two, I know you're just saying that because you obviously just have some type of bias against Hogan for some reason, which I get. But at the same time, this is a perception thing. There could be some people out there that are like, "Oh, Warrior was my favorite champion ever." Okay, cool. I'm not shitting on you for that. I'm just giving you my opinion. I thought he was a weak champion. So
I'm feeling very attacked right now. You know what it was for me? But by 6, I was just like, you know what, I'm done. Like, just stop winning at WrestleMania. And of course, you go through like the next WrestleManias, and he just keeps fucking winning. The Warrior thing in relation to that, though, it's like you wanted to be part of that character back then too. It's
Right.
just once you get older and kind of realize all the shit that he was doing behind the scenes, you're like, wow, what a fucking asshole that guy was. Him and Nails and a bunch of other people trying to, like, do shit to get more money and all that happy horse shit. Just like, what are you doing, guys? Just go in the back, be happy, pop a beer with the boys, and just chill.
I had to buy that figure of SummerSlam '91. They did a SummerSlam '91
the Warrior
action
one?
figure. Yeah, and I'm like, and I was telling Billy about this. I said, "You got the McMahon figure." I said, "You got the Warrior figure." You got the Warrior figure from that one. I said, "You have to do a photo of Vince handing over his walking papers to him after trying to hold him up for all his fucking money." I said, "You have to do it." I don't think he's refrained from doing it due to recent events, unfortunately, because he's just like, with Vince, it's like doing anything is like kind of taboo right now. So I'm like, yeah, I get it.
But he's gonna start his own wrestling promotion.
Shut the fuck up. Anybody who thinks that is a complete idiot.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to agree.
Because he's going to be 79 years old in a few months. We're in the midst of a wrestling war where everybody is buying up everybody at certain points.
Well, plus, not for nothing, who the fuck is actually going to want to work for him at this point?
Maybe Ryback, Madcap Moss.
Madcap Moss is just doing it for a payday.
Yeah.
That's it.
And then
Emma with him.
Eva Marie.
Yep. Eva Marie.
Like
Emma with Madcap Moss, because they're a couple.
Maybe Lacey Evans. Like everybody.
I think she's done.
Yeah, everybody that he thought liked at some certain point, and he was the only one that liked them, will probably go to work for him. But I don't see it happening. Because
it's fucking not going to.
Nobody wants to do business with him.
That too.
Like, it's over. Like, it's never going to be, he's never going to be in the business again. It's over. It's done with. Fucking forget about it. Let's move on. But I understand, like I see AEW and WWE working together more. Like, the chances of that are higher than Vince McMahon coming out of retirement and building like another company. He's just not going to do it.
It's funny that you say that, because I don't know why it didn't pop in my head until you saying that, but I was driving back to New York today and I took I-95, and yeah, so they still have the old building. They still have the one a little bit further down if you're coming from west,
yeah.
right? So there's basically two buildings. So if you're on I-95 leaving the New York area, going east towards, like, Providence, Boston, etc., points north, you see the original building, Titan Tower. If you're going west towards
New York, logo?
Hold on, you cut out for a second. Is the logo
still up on it?
Yeah,
the old building.
Yeah, still up.
The old. Wow, that's
still
surprising.
There. Yeah, the logo is still there. Yeah. If you're going westbound, it's also in Stamford. You go through Stamford west towards the New York area, towards points west. You see the new building, or the rental, whatever the hell you want to call it.
Right.
And as I'm passing that, going west today, back to Long Island, all I can think of is, and there resides my favorite wrestling con. But it was just, to me, it was just bittersweet having that feeling of like, that's my favorite con right there. That's where he works. I don't know. It's a situation for me where, like, a lot of these guys who've been champion, though, just going back to the original conversation, like, the guys on the slide, like, had bad reigns. They just did.
Right.
They just did. And, you can make the argument for Jericho not having a good title reign. You can make the argument for, Austin had many that were great. You could make arguments for one of his being bad. Like, whatever at that point, though. He was still a very good champion. So, ranking these is a little bit tough. That's why we want to do it as wall of shame and not ranking. Because it felt like if we ranked them, it would have been a little bit of a nightmare, honestly.
Yes.
But, yeah, I think we're about done. But final thoughts going into tomorrow, since we're recording on Thursday, for the draft. Any you think that are going to be surprising? Do you think we're going to see a lot of call-ups? How are you feeling about the draft?
I think call-ups, it'll be interesting to see where Carmelo Hayes goes. Dragunov, too. I fully expect he'll be going somewhere as well.
Well, I mean, he dropped the belt to Trick, so I'd be surprised if he doesn't get called up.
Yeah, I think they're at least both those guys are going to get called up. I think Carmelo and Dragunov. I just don't know like where they're going to go respectively.
True.
I wonder if Dragunov's going to be cheap. That'd be interesting if Dragunov's the third member of.
That's a good point. I didn't think of that. That's a good point. I would wonder what the dynamic there would look like.
Well, why not, right? But there's only because of the fact that it brings him up to the main roster. It kind of gives him a built-in kind of like, hey, he's here now. All this
Which
stuff.
Then could turn into a feud down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
So like because there's that history there, you can plant the seeds of it and all that stuff.
Yep.
And I just think I think it's a thought process of what I would do. Other than that, I really don't know. Like, because they could move Drew over to SmackDown. They could move. I don't know.
Well,
I really don't.
Let's stick with the call-ups for a second. Because I think that's a great conversation, especially what you said about Dragunov. What about for women? Because you have a lot of women talent in NXT that you could potentially call up. You have your current champion, Roxanne Perez. You have Lyra Valkyria that you could call up too. Former NXT champion, women's champion, excuse me.
Leah probably. Roxanne is currently the champion, right?
Yeah, but I mean they did it last year with Indy, where they called her up. Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
She was current champion. I blank on so many of the women there. I know they have a few though, but those are their top two, I would say, for NXT. Lyra, I think they could definitely bring up and probably put on Raw. She's already feuded with Becky Lynch. You could potentially move Tiffany Stratton from SmackDown to Raw to facilitate that. They've fought in the past.
Gigi Dolan, I'm surprised hasn't gotten called up.
Yeah, her and JC Jane. Thea Hale, I think, is a little bit too young still, in my opinion. Could use a little bit rounding out, but she's still very good. There's a couple other ones too that I'm just blanking on.
I feel like you have enough. If you wanted to bring up Gigi Dolan and maybe somebody else, maybe JC Jane, if you wanted to put them in a stable with like Liv Morgan.
I don't want to do that to Liv at this point.
Well, but Liv is the leader kind of deal.
No, I understand that, but I don't know. I didn't like Ruby Riot Squad, so it's like...
Yeah, but it's not like a Riot Squad, but it's more or less somebody, because Liv, this also gives her an opportunity. It's kind of like... well, it kind of would be like Riot Squad, just because it'd be like...
That's what I'm saying!
You know? But Liv would probably be challenging for the championship. And then you could have JC and Gigi also be tag team champions. It's simple. Like, because then when Rhea comes back, she's got to run through 2 people before she can even get to live. So
True. That is true.
that's built-in storyline.
Trying to think who else. I mean, it's tough because you could do a lot with a lot of them, right? Like, you have Caden Carter and Katana Chance. I almost like merge names there. You have those two, which maybe you could make like a party squad or something like that. I hate to keep going with squad, but it's just like, it's not wrong. You have somebody. Oh man, I can't believe I'm blanking on that one girl in NXT's name right now. But you have her that you could probably stick with, like Tiffany Stratton. You have others that you could probably put, ironically enough, with Piper Niven and Chelsea Green.
Right.
It's just, you could do a lot because the only real women's faction you have right now is on SmackDown, and it's Damage Control.
Right.
You don't have any others right now, so teaming them up and doing something like that on Raw is a good idea because, let's be real, at this point, you have a few stables. So in SmackDown, you have Final Testament, you have the Bloodline. I'm not even going to count the OC anymore. I'm just not going to do that. Because it's not really a stable anymore with AJ going heel. On Raw, you have Judgment Day, and I feel like that's it. And on SmackDown, you also have Bobby Lashley with the Street Profits or the Pride, which they're still not announcing as the Pride.
Right.
It's just, there's so many different ways they could go, and this makes it fun. I kind of hope they don't continue to do the draft as often. That's my only gripe, because I feel like the last one was just last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, like I don't want to see that. Like maybe 2 to 3 years, make it, a biannual event or something like that. I'm down with that.
Right, no, yeah, 100%.
I do. So we talked about this earlier too, real quick. We talked about the rules. So basically, as you said earlier, it's not finalized till the following week. You have, I believe it's 8 rounds or 6 rounds or something like that. 4 rounds or something. I don't remember the amount of rounds on SmackDown. Raw is going to have more. On Friday, I believe SmackDown goes first, or maybe it's Raw. And then on Raw itself, it'll be swapped, so the other brand will go first.
Right.
And all of the champions, except for the Women's World Championships, are locked. So they're not moving. So Cody Rhodes is staying on SmackDown. Damian Priest is staying on Raw. Becky is staying on Raw. Bayley is staying on SmackDown. They can still get... I'm sorry, I should just clarify that. The Women's World Champions can still get drafted because they can go anywhere. But every other champion is basically locked to the current brand they're on. Which I'm going to ask it as a question. Given the fact that we have this Netflix swap coming in January, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about locking the champions?
I feel like you have to, because there's just been so much back and forth sometimes. I feel like it just confuses the hell out of people. Because again, we talked about last year when they came up with the World Heavyweight Championship, how it was like both Raw and SmackDown people. It's just like, what the fuck are you doing? I thought this is a brand championship for Raw, but you're having, it's just, to me, there's just moments where you're just like, this doesn't make any sense why a SmackDown guy is challenging for the, never mind. Whatever.
No, but that's still a good point, though. So let's further that argument just real quick for a second. So in your saying that, I have a counter question for you. If we feel that they could arguably fight for any title regardless of which brand they're on or the champion is on, I don't hate that. Let me specify that real quick. But don't you feel that like locking Cody on SmackDown maybe is not the best idea? Because hear me out for a second. If he is your biggest baby face and he continues to be so into January, into this change, wouldn't since Netflix is paying you all this fucking money, wouldn't you maybe want him on Raw?
A lot can happen in 9 months.
Hey, that's fair. That's true. Totally agree.
That I don't know what the long-term plan is. I think that what they're probably doing is they're probably assessing like, all right, well, we got the top female draw on Raw, and we got the top male star on SmackDown, because I think that they're looking at Rhea when she gets back, because she was already at that point anyways of just like, well, she's a mainstream star, so it's like we can keep her on Raw. People are going to tune in because it's her, it's Rhea. So, I think that that might be their thought process. I don't know. Again, a lot can happen in 9 months, but I think that all of it. It's a very valid question because, yeah, I would want Cody on Raw on Netflix, to be quite honest, because he's the biggest star you have, at least male wise.
Well, I mean, that's why I asked, because I'm not opposed to them locking it right now. I'm not opposed to them saying, well, in 9 months this doesn't make any difference because everything's going to change. But I have to be crystal clear here. Like, if that's the scenario, why do the draft at all? Why do it now if that's the case? Because you don't know what you're going to want to do. And to your point, let me elaborate, right? So maybe they want to gauge the interest of the fan base and therefore gauge the interest of like Netflix to say, here's what your roster's going to look like. Whether it be Raw, whether it be SmackDown, whether it be NXT. But more specifically to Netflix and to their argument of saying, hey, are you good with these? And there's also an aspect that we didn't even talk about or think about of, do they even care right now? Because maybe it's not a thing until they start doing the shows.
Right.
So it could really go either way, but to your point, and I have to agree, which is why I asked the question in the first place, if I'm WWE and Netflix is paying me all this money, and in tandem to that argument, if I am Netflix, I want your biggest draw. I'm paying you billions of dollars. I want your biggest stars. I want Cody Rhodes. I want Jey Uso. I want Roman Reigns. So obviously Roman's probably not going to be drafted because he's not there. I heard he's eligible. That's stupid. Anyway, he should be a free agent. He should do what they did with Omos and Brock Lesnar and others last year. He should be a free agent wherever you want to go. I heard Adam Pearce teased in a social media post earlier. He posted a picture of Brock Lesnar. So, oh jeez,
is he available in the draft? And if that's the case, can you fucking put him in the video game for Christ's sake?
Yeah. Hashtag 2K24. Let's do it.
They already got enough problems this week, those fuckers.
I know. That's why I wasn't serious when I said it. But to that point, you're going to want your top guys on Raw. You're just going to. So I don't know. The whole thing confuses me a little bit from that aspect because, again, if it's something where it's like, hey, I want this guy, hey, I want that guy, that's one thing. But from the standpoint of your best bottom dollar, your best bang for your buck, you want Cody on Raw. So we'll have to see, though, because right now he's not eligible. None of the champions are, except, as I said before, the Women's World Champions. But we'll have to see. We'll talk about it next week when we come back and see where all the pieces landed, so to speak. And
another point. Sorry to cut you off.
no, go ahead.
But another point I wanted to bring up was what Nick Khan was discussing recently, in the sense that WrestleMania could be moving to the month of May next year.
I did hear that.
Because they really don't want to run up against the NCAA anymore for the Final Four. Especially too with the fact that it was such a rating success this year, not just the men's, but also the women's.
Yep.
So I think that they kind of want to have the weekend unopposed. The problem with that is that if you go to May, you have to deal with the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs.
So that does make it tougher.
Yes.
The other issue, I shouldn't say issue, excuse me. The other reason I heard that he might want to move it to May is the weather. Having a May WrestleMania, and we've seen it the past couple of years, a lot of outdoor venues. A lot of outdoor venues. We also saw it night one of WrestleMania 40 this year, with night one being incredibly cold.
Right.
And just a lot of people bundling up. Even the commentary was talking about it. Whereas in early May to late May, which I don't think they should do because you're running up even further against those playoffs, but you're going to have potentially more options open up for those outdoor venues.
Right.
And especially in places that right now they would probably avoid. Please come to Gillette Stadium, Foxborough, Massachusetts, where the Patriots and the Revolution play. But that's the truth of it. Like,
you wouldn't want to.
It opens those up. Nah, why? So you can sit on the Green Monster and shit?
The visual of it. The visual.
Do you know how many people would be? Okay. Fair. I will grant you that. But I'm just thinking that if I want to watch a game, I don't even want to go to Fenway.
I know.
So you're going to give me 2 days in a row of WrestleMania in Fenway Park? So listen, like, let's be clear for those that are not baseball fans. Fenway Park is old. The seats are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And if you're a bigger person, I'm just going to say it that way for fucking reasons, it is very, very fucking uncomfortable to sit in Fenway Park. So an average baseball game is, we'll just say 3 hours, okay? If you get there early and you get your seat at WrestleMania, you're sitting there objectively for 5 hours.
Yes.
Fucking pass. Dude, I don't even like sitting in those seats for an hour, let alone fucking 5
We would be at the
hours.
Cask and Flag and drunk.
I'd be sitting in the fucking seats, or I'd be at the Cask, obviously. I'd just be fucking.
Or Boston Beer Works just hammered, like,
It's one of those things. So just real quick, just a side story to this. So when I was very young, like a baby, I believe it was that year where the Patriots went to the Super Bowl against the Bears and got destroyed.
That was
84, I think.
86.
Okay, 86. So I would have been in 3.
Yeah.
Okay. So my parents did not get tickets, but they did like the tailgate method of, we're going to hang out, and then we'll go to a hotel and watch the game. And they did it. They made it like a weekend out of it, or a week, excuse me. And listen, like, if it was in Boston, I would end up doing the same thing.
Right.
I would not want to sit in fucking Fenway Park. I just fucking wouldn't. I wouldn't. Fenway Park is so goddamn uncomfortable. Like, I remember, even in my 20s, okay, like 150 pounds ago.
Oh, it stings.
Yeah.
It hurts.
Dude, I'm like pulling up to like the desk right now.
Not just because of weight. It's
no, it's not
height,
weight.
You're fucked.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. So
yeah,
I was pretty scrawny back in my 20s
Yeah.
before the beer finally hit, which is probably why I drink mead now because it's gluten free. Anyways, I'm like barely 6 feet, I would say, and you're taller, so you fucking know.
Yeah.
Your knees are like pushing against the chair in front of you,
Yep.
pushing. And like I said, like I was relatively small back then. I was tall, but frame wise, I was tiny. I was very scrawny and skinny as a kid. So that transitioned into my mid 20s. And dude, like I just remember being like almost 6 feet and like my knees are like up against the chair in front of me to a point where I'm like, I'm surprised the dude in front of me is not like screaming at me, get your knees out of my back.
Right.
That bad. And I cannot imagine doing that for 5 hours. I just can't. So when people are like listening to this and being like, why do you sound like such a bitch about it? Because it's fucking uncomfortable.
Not only uncomfortable, the prices now are exorbitant. I mean,
Well, I mean, listen, let's not even talk about the game for a second. Let's talk about the same topic we're talking about with WrestleMania.
Yes.
So I don't know if you looked at the prices of like the late ad tickets. You're talking like $2,500.
Yeah, I know.
I'm gonna pay $2,500 to be uncomfortable for 2 days in a row for 5 hours each day.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
I'd be like hip dysplasia. My knee hurts. What the hell?
I'm not
am I
even
doing?
going there. I would just be like, fucking just leave me. Kill me now. Put me out of my fucking misery. I'm sorry. I don't think any sporting event is worth that. I just don't. Whether it's WrestleMania, whether it's World Series, whether, maybe the Winter Classic, maybe.
My dad went to Game 5 of the '86 series. Like that was at Fenway. Yeah, of course, it was a different experience back then because this is 1986.
Yeah, it's way different.
Yeah, it's way different now. Even Fenway is different because I remember when we were kids being able to go there. It was like the Wild Wild West at certain points.
Probably still is.
Not really anymore because once you go to that, even Yawkey Way, you're having to immediately go through like the process of getting into the gates and all that stuff, where before it was like you could
Just
walk
go.
down the whole street, no problem. You could go to hit every bar on the way there, and now you can't even do that because the minute you hit Yawkey Way, it's like you gotta have your tickets out. It's like, okay, see what this is now. And then you go in there and everything is exorbitantly priced, but you can't bring anything in. So you're fucked.
I remember going a lot in my 20s, and it's so different. Not even just for the reasons that you mentioned, but the Yankees rivalry just feels very different now. It does not feel the same as it did back in the 90s and early 2000s.
When you win, when winning the championship, and this is one argument I could make, winning the championship for the Boston Red Sox was probably one of the worst things because it pretty much took away the reason why everybody was watching the club. And it not only did that, they've won 4 times since then. Like they've won 4 titles in the last 20 years, which I remember their 4th one. I remember going to Marshall's at one point, and they had like the fitted hats with the patch on it. And the fitted hats are like $40, $50 a piece. This is Marshall's. They were $8 a piece. I'm like, this is a fucking problem. Because this is the same team that 15 years earlier was the hottest ticket in town.
I'm going to tell you, it doesn't matter. And the reason is that if you buy a black hat, you're probably looking at $8.
Right.
Right. You slap that logo on there, you're looking at like 40, like you just said.
Yeah.
Once you slap that logo on, forget it. And I'll tell you, just from being at the game the other night with the Bruins, I did not even look in the pro shop because
No.
I knew if I looked in that fucking pro shop, number one, I'm going to want to spend money. That's the first thing I'm going to tell you right now, because I need a new fucking Bruins sweatshirt. Second thing I'm going to tell you is I knew if I walked in there, I would be spending probably, and again, like I'm just talking about a hoodie with the Bruins logo on it. I'm probably spending more than $120.
Right.
I don't know if that's accurate, but I can guess.
It's close.
Yeah,
Probably.
and that's the thing. Whereas I have a gray one that still kind of fits me, and I'm gonna say it just arbitrarily like this: it's fucking free.
Yeah.
It's fucking free. I have one already. I need one that fits a little bit better. I want kind of like the knitted fucking loop one at the top. If I buy that, I'm looking at 120 from the pro shop. If I go online, I'm probably looking at like 80 for just for a fucking hoodie. Meanwhile, if I go buy a Champions, no, it's fine. If I go buy a Champions hoodie with nothing on it, it's probably like $20.
I have like the Red Sox hats. I bought a couple of those, the fitted ones, with the patch on it for like $8. It's like, why not? And then I think there was another Patriots. I think the last two Super Bowls I was able to get a discount price and stuff, like for hats and stuff. When you win too much, apparently people just stop caring. Which is like, they won their fifth and sixth Super Bowl, and you could buy stuff clearance. And then the Red Sox just won their fourth World Series.
Yeah.
They just won their fourth World Series. Maybe the most dominant team in the team's history. And nobody gives a shit. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's fucking
like,
crazy,
what has happened?
Man. Yeah, it's fucking
like,
crazy.
This region is, like, insane as far as that goes. It's like, about the Bruins and the Celtics, I mean, apparently. It's good.
Yeah.
But, it's hard. The Patriots are in a rebuilding phase. Obviously, we saw that tonight.
Right.
With the Red Sox, it's like, I just want tickets to get cheap enough so I can actually go sit in the Monster.
Yeah.
The most comfortable seats in the building.
Yeah. It's funny because when we had the conversation about them doing a potential Mania there, I'm just like, that's the only place I'd fucking sit, and that's probably the fucking nosebleeds compared to the fucking ring.
No, actually, I bet you the seats for those would be sick because you'd be high off the ground.
I mean, listen, that's true, but it's still probably the fucking nosebleeds. But let's be realistic. I don't
the
think
setup for
that you that way.
The setup for that would probably be astronomical.
It would have to
be for the riggings and all that stuff for the oh god, but the visual of them coming like out of the bullpen.
Yeah, that's the only place they would really be able to come out of.
Unbelievable. Like, just the visual of it, I'd love it. But it is unpractical as far as a venue is concerned.
It is. If they were going to do anywhere in Boston, it would have to be either TD, which they're probably not going to do a Mania again ever in the Garden or TD Garden.
No.
It would have to be Gillette. And even in saying that, I don't think it would be great, which sucks. But
the problem with Gillette is the fact that it's like an hour away from any airport between like Providence and Boston, and the fact too that there's no venue really close. Like, even if they wanted to go to like the Bank North, the TD Garden, in Boston, that's still an hour away.
Yeah.
So that logistically, that's another thing that they'd have to worry about. Of like, okay, so the Hall of Fame is Friday night, and then we have to drive it. Like, yeah. Like, where with Philly, everything was so close together.
Yeah.
Like, they really didn't have to,
If they did Gillette, they would have to probably rent out the hotels right in that plaza before anybody else would be able to. And, yeah, to your point, I don't know if there's really a venue to do SmackDown that isn't at Gillette. And like you said, if they did TD or even Fenway for the night before and maybe for Raw, it would have to be there. And, you mentioned it before, which we didn't really touch on too much, but it's also during the playoffs. So if both Boston teams are in the playoffs, is the NHL or NBA really going to be like, hey, well, since you have SmackDown there, we like, they're not going to give a fuck. They're going to be like, no, tell WWE to move.
They could go to DCU Center in Worcester, but they'd never do that. Like that would be a downgrade for them.
I mean, for that weekend, yeah, it would be.
Yeah, and unless Worcester decides, oh, we'll give them Polar Park for the event. It's like they ain't gonna fucking do a minor league park for goddamn WrestleMania. They're not.
I
Like,
mean,
they'll
I
come
don't
in
know
for a
how
house
much
show, but
yeah,
that's it.
I was gonna say I don't know how much Polar Park fits, but I feel like it's not going to be enough for like a WrestleMania.
It's a great building, by the way. But I've already stated I'm like it should be a house. Like if they could do a house show or AEW could run it, but because there are wrestling companies in the area that are still trying to kick the tires and getting a building and trying to book that building. So who knows
What Polar Park?
There. Yeah, because no wrestling company has run Polar Park yet.
I don't know many aside from WWE that run outdoor shows though. I mean, you could say AEW, but that's just Wembley, like one a year. Okay,
There's Beyond Wrestling, which operates downtown.
true.
True. But I don't know what their, I don't know.
Sure,
Like,
depends on the buy-in rate and everything too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
All right, man. Do you have any other closing or final thoughts for the evening?
No, I think we pretty much exhausted our thought process on this tonight.
Yeah, I would say so. All right, you want to start the plugs then, my guy?
Yes, be sure to like and subscribe here to us on Diamond Podcasting Productions here on YouTube. Also like and subscribe here and on Spotify and Apple for Pro Wrestling World Talks. The numbers are really doing well on those platforms, so I'm really appreciative of that. I wish the YouTube numbers would still to kind of come on, people. Like we're good enough. Start liking, subscribing, and watching our stuff more.
Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. All right.
Tell your friends. Tell your friends.
So I will do the same thing. I will just repeat them. So for Pro Wrestling World Talks, that was Dan. I am Mac. Please do all the things on Spotify and on Apple. We're also The Shoot on YouTube, part of Diamond Podcasting Productions. Please definitely like and subscribe to that so we can increase viewers for that show, which also increases viewers for Pro Wrestling World Talks. It's like win-win.
It's a win-win.
It's like buy one, get one free.
Yeah.
Do the things.
Do the things. Do the things.
I don't know if it's the alcohol or if it's just do the things. But that was Dan. I am Mac. I hope everyone had a great time listening or watching, since we also do both of those things too. Just means you gotta do it all. Anyways, draft conversation next week, more weekend wrestling, and we'll have to figure out what else we can actually talk about. But until such time, I hope everyone has a great night, great evening, great day, whatever it is you're doing, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.
Boo ran.